This conference will now be recorded.
Walk down the street and say, that's this.
Thanks.
Careful. Be faster. And
I wondered if it was so expensive you didn't want to tell us.
Call the meeting to order and ask everyone to please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. Our first order of business will be to approve our agenda. Bruce, is there any changes?
Mr. Chairman, there were several amended agendas. You'll know you have the right one. If you look at 8:30 under highway, and you'll see at the very bottom there where it says SDGFP maintenance agreement. I think I have it underlined. So that's the correct version of the agenda. Otherwise, there's no changes. I would note that I think Brett Runge's in the room as well. She may, if you have time at the end of the meeting, come down and give you a preview of attractions coming up next month, the boards of equalization, maybe discuss an issue that might come up as well. Other than that,
That'd be great if will that work for you, Brett? All right, thank you.
Bruce, is there new agendas out there?
yes.
Okay, I'll get one in a second.
Motion to approve the most recent amended agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of our agenda. All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Do we have any conflicts today, Randy?
Yeah, I do have one, Mr. Chairman, at the 9:15, I have a conflict. And I think there may be an approach permit that I have a conflict
To
on.
be fair, anyone else have any conflicts? Just make it a habit to tag on Randy. Richard?
It depends on what the Forest Service does there. So one of their items on there has to do with property down on Rochford Road, but they've never done that before, so I thought maybe it was just to let us know what they do. They usually send that stuff to the people that live next to the problem or whatever they have.
It's probably because of our cooperative.
All right, well,
Well, I wondered about that. Yeah.
we need approval of our meetings from the last.
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion
That was good.
and second for approval of our minutes from March 14th meeting. All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, quick comment, best minutes in the county.
They absolutely are, always are. Well, I usually skip the bills, but let's do those next.
Can't just skip it one more.
can't. Just one.
Questions on the bills?
I've had mine answered. I move we pay the bills.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the bills. All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, I would say thank you to Greg for sending out the stuff ahead of time. It makes it much easier.
Travel requests, I believe we have one, don't we?
That was a travel request for Liz Shankar to attend a DUI instructing certificate course in Sacramento, California from April 27th through May 3rd.
I move to approve as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Personnel, Brenda.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the step raise for Jacqueline Huner, Kendall Shane, Blaze Eagle Horse, and Mitch McKibben as presented.
I'll second it. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the classification change for Monica Lucio and Vanessa Adrian as presented.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We got 3 new hires.
Yes. And a new hire for Andrew Nelson as a correction officer 1, grade 1, base pay of 21.23. He'll be a full-time permanent employee effective March 28th.
Mr. Chairman, is Andrew Nelson gonna move to the county, or is he living somewhere that's acceptable?
Yeah, that according to the personnel manual, they do not need to live in the county any longer.
Or you put that on
Looks like
that?
department head or elected official.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Move to approve as presented for Andrew Nelson. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And we have Anthony Spencer as a new hire as a correction officer 2, grade 3, base pay of 23.46, and he is going to be a part-time fill-in. Anthony was a full-time employee and is now going to a part-time status and to be effective March.
Move approval.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, and then I have a new hire, equalizations officer as appraiser 1, grade 1, base pay of 22.26 as a full-time permanent employee, and he will be effective on April 10th.
Move to approve as presented. Second.
Motion and a second. All those
Question.
in,
Question.
go ahead.
Are we now at full force in that department?
Yeah, then we'll have full office.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I had to have a cell phone per diem for Jessica Johnson, effective March 27th at $104 per month.
Okay, what's your pleasure on that, gentlemen?
What was it, 104? 104 per month, yep.
Motion approved. Second.
Yeah, the motion is second for approval. All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Brenda, I have no idea what this next one is.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Lexi is here to talk to you about the agreement for the Northern Dual Intentional Alternatives Initiative, known as the GDAI. And I think she came in and gave you a presentation about it about a month ago. She's here to follow up with that.
All right, you have the floor.
Good morning.
Morning.
Since our last conversation, we have been able to finalize the MOU for this initiative. I will be applying for the grant here within the next month or so. So I'm just looking to see if you guys would be willing to sign our MOU in support of the initiative.
Okay, gentlemen.
I have a couple questions, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have the state's attorney signing, the commission signing, the sheriff signing, and is that typical?
Correct. Yes. The idea behind this is they want to, when we apply for this grant, they want to show that there is support all the way around from the people that are going to be most impacted by this.
Okay, further questions?
Move approval.
Okay, I'll second it. Any further discussion? Randy?
Well, we have 4 school districts in our county, and there's only one school district signing this document.
Yes. The way it was put to me is that we do not need to have signatures from every single school district in our area that we're going to be serving. The main ones that we need to have everyone on board for are your commissions, your state's attorney's office, your sheriff's offices. And then the additional ones are more or less to just show that there is support in other areas as well. We do not need to have school district support in order to be able to pursue this grant. We do have the Lee Deadwood School District, and we do have the Meade County School District that have both signed. I have also had conversations with Kirk Easton over at Spearfish, and he has indicated his support as well, but he did not feel it was necessary to sign.
How about Butte?
Butte County,
The
their
Bellevue School District.
the Bellevue School District was not interested in signing. Their concern is they worry that JDAI is going to take the place of Teen Court. And so they were just not interested in signing it this time. However, that if they do decide to change their mind later on, that is certainly something that can be done.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Brendan?
Does our sheriff have any comment or concerns on this?
I have no concerns. I believe in this program. I think it's a good program, and honestly, I believe in Alexis. So I appreciate the opportunity to comment. It's a good program.
Okay. All those, Richard?
Is Butte County's concern valid?
No, I can see where their concern comes from, but this program is completely separate from your teen courts. Teen court is for your lowest level offenses. The diversion and JDAI portion of this is filling the gap that we already had between your the kids that are not eligible for teen court because whatever offense that they have gotten in trouble for is more than what can be handled through teen court, but is still lower than, say, the probationary level. So this provides an alternative to, having a criminal record for those kids who otherwise wouldn't have had that opportunity in the past. The diversion side of it, teen court lasts for a period of 90 days. Diversion lasts for a period of 120 days. Teen court, you do check-ins every 2 weeks. Diversion, you do check-ins every single week. And then with teen court, of course, your sentence is decided by teenagers. Whereas with diversion, the sentence is determined by the coordinator for the program, parents, any input from the state's attorney's office, and the youth themselves.
Thank you.
Sure, Robert.
So remind me how the funding is on this. Do we have this funded in our budget, or is there special funding for this
She's applying for a grant.
grant? Okay, thank you.
The grant I'm applying for, I'm going to be applying for $120,000 a year. That is going to be for a period of 3 years. At the end of that 3-year period, I will need to figure out how to make it sustainable. And it's also going to, you guys can look and see if you think that it's a program worth continuing as well, and see if it saves you guys enough money to make it worth continuing.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion before us will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Grab name raffle, Brenda?
Yes. Shane.
I've got it right here, if I may.
Go ahead.
For your consideration is a raffle request submitted by the South Dakota American Legion Foundation. You have a copy of it in your file. The date of the raffle drawing is going to be February 16th, 2024. The tickets are going to be sold, I think, in June 12th. Ultimately, the final prize is $1,000 in gift certificates to benefit veterans.
Motion not object.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second not to object. All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Sheriff, I believe we're up to you.
Good morning again.
Welcome. I think Eric had something to do with it.
Did you switch?
Did not.
I ended up with the chair one day.
Like a meeting.
You just crank it up.
We're used to it, Lexi. Go ahead, sir.
Not too much to brief. The project has been challenged with weather. That weather continues. They did manage to get a portion of the courtroom floor poured, so that's very positive. On another note, our committee continues to meet. In fact, we met yesterday. Our learning curve is steep, but I can tell you that everybody works very hard to do the right things and to learn as fast as we can on your behalf. So that's really all I have. We continue to work in your stead, and if you have anything for me, gladly try to answer.
Any questions from the board?
Have you had any change orders?
There are some change orders that we are reviewing. They come by way of cost savings and some expenditures as well. So we're waiting for some estimates to come back, but there are some on the table.
I did give him a copy, Sheriff, of the RCS report from earlier in the week. I get it to the next meeting, so.
Perfect.
All right, thank you, sir. Our next item is a public hearing at 8:25, so.
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
There's a couple things on the opioid settlement in the packet.
Yep.
But I don't see them on the agenda.
Yep.
Are they?
Yeah, they're there.
Okay,
That is good. Hillary's coming in at 10 o'clock.
okay, thank you.
That's the first round of grant money that you've received, and it sounds like that.
Okay,
they
there
are
it is.
able to use it according to the intended purposes and are willing to comply with the requirements that Brent is going to have to monitor and report, right? And so Hillary will be here.
Okay, we're gonna take a break until 8:25.
Cross her legs every way she could.
Roger, how are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
Excellent.
Nice to be back.
Well, I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, I know. Like yesterday.
Yeah, you had to put up with him this whole year,
I
didn't
know
you?
it. I know it.
I'm sorry.
That stream flows both ways.
You guys got done with your business so early yesterday that by the time I got over there from the house, you were all done already.
Yeah. Well, then we had keyboard.
You say the way it works.
Yeah. But even the house was pretty quick yesterday. We were staying 2 feet over there.
Yeah, I thought they might have to go a little longer over there because everybody wants to speak.
That was surprisingly.
You've never experienced that, have you?
Oh, jeez, not like that.
Are you saying you had competition?
No, I'm pretty quiet. I'm pretty quiet. I minded my P's and Q's.
Brand did a really good job this year of heeding the suggestion that
Don't be a jack in the box.
quick to listen and slow to speak.
Yeah.
Once their eyes glaze over.
That really
Quick
surprises
talk.
me.
Well, I did kind of attack the speaker, but the door was closed. And, you can't let people that have walk on you, you know. Helene was being beat up pretty bad, so yeah, I was on that water bill, 156. They wanted to hog house a bunch of crap on it that we didn't want. They was trying to kill it. And so I said, we've got a vehicle bill sitting on the President Pro Tem's desk. Well, we'd have to waive the rules. I said, no, it's ready to go to conference committee. All you got to do is use it. He didn't believe me because the House didn't hold up what they said they would do. And it's all about spending. The governor was against it. That was part of it. Yeah, 104. But yeah, and you know, he just didn't want to listen to a rookie legislator. And then when he found out I was right, he was
There you go.
10 minutes.
Well,
That's perfect.
Helene was pretty aggressive on the water.
Yeah.
now that she's over everybody's property safe.
Yeah.
Sort of.
They're calling her water woman.
Oh, do they?
That's her new nickname. Oh. And I'm actually on the water board. I was the senator assigned as a vacancy.
Well, that's a good board to be on. That's a
Water's gold.
Yeah.
And then yesterday we had a summer study appointed that I'm vice chair on for county revenue and unfunded mandates. They're going to get the scope of work out at the next board meeting.
Along the interstate, or near the river on this way, there's quite a few new water tanks, big cones and paper base and that. I believe they have a new line there, like the web pipeline.
Well, I haven't driven it for a while.
We check in on Wednesday.
It must be.
It's not a new one, then you want to leave that.
It isn't?
Oh,
New liners make a bigger tank.
we check in
Well,
Wednesday.
just
and
get more
check out.
tests.
Oh,
I've
I
seen
see.
that too. A big water tank.
Which system is that?
Workshops.
Check
in
I was
Tuesday
wondering
night.
about that. There's several.
Not BC.
Appear to be a lot.
Back up right after.
They usually use.
Well, there's a lot of people concerned about water now, right? Rightly so. Yeah,
No.
that's right.
Where was that at?
Yeah, we need
I
to
don't
be
know.
here too.
That's right.
That's
I
right.
don't even know who
Well,
else is going
disappointed
to.
to see that
A
water.
few of the legislators I know.
Not
did
going.
something.
Didn't hear anything about it.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny that came to the egg saying we didn't hear anything about it. Otten didn't know anything about it either.
Well, I think Chase,
There's 4-H and there's legislative audit.
They don't have a, unless it was a
I used to think
resolution, it wasn't a summer study. So it might have been by resolution. Ad hoc.
Yeah, we've got hotel room. I've got.
So they didn't want me there very badly after I beat up the Bills.
Yeah, Tuesday night, Wednesday nights.
That was a terrible.
Starts Wednesday morning.
And I told her so.
I always fix.
I don't know what the
Well, you
costs
gotta
are
get-
to pipe the water.
Not only that, but she's inviting the people she wants to be there, not everybody. Yeah. It's all that
Do you
control.
remember pulling in Skinner?
Well, politically,
I know
it
it.
wasn't an issue.
Every darn bill she signed, she had a political pressure.
Good morning, Mr. Cosell. How are you?
It's just-
How you doing?
Hey, Steve, how you doing?
Marion.
Oh. Hi.
Morning.
We're not quite ready for you, John. We got one other item to take care
If you were here earlier, we'd be done already. We appreciate that.
You didn't hear us calling your name?
I did not.
Are those two permits in here, John, that we were talking about?
Yeah, 3, including that board.
Did you get your questions answered yet?
Yeah.
Are they gonna extend the pipes?
Yep.
Okay.
Agreed to everything that we sent them back.
We've got a public hearing at 8:25, so we're just kind of in limbo.
Have we lifted the road limits on high roads now?
We still have our load limits on. We haven't.
Still have them on.
Yeah. You know, we'll go, that'll be part of it next month. Everything's still freezing in. It's
Yeah.
been cold enough to get everything out yet.
Uh-huh. Now there's some potholes showing up around too.
Yeah. So, I don't know if any of you been out to the St. Andre, one of the bridges is gone. We've been along with it.
Getting right with it, huh?
Yeah. The north bridge is mostly gone. We're going out today to remove the guardrail on the south bridge, and I expect that they'll start demolishing that this weekend.
Your crew removing the
The guardrail, yeah, that was part of our deal. Remove the guardrail, do all the fencing and the tree removal.
The week of May 16th is the Western Interstate Region Conference. I'll be attending that. It's through the county association. It's in central or south Utah, down Georgetown. And in 2025, it's in Rapid City. They did get chosen as the host of the legislative conference.
Are we close enough to it?
It's 24, so.
Have you weighed any trucks going into Fisher gravel, Simon gravel? They're coming into exit 2 there, and they're getting bigger and bigger trucks all the time.
Yeah.
And I wondered if they'd been checked for weight at all. They're coming in there with full loads from Wyoming and we're dumping part of it in the Fisher place there, and then pulling on with the rest of it. I don't know if they go to North Dakota or what. They have to have a different load limit up in North Dakota, so
We're just
they've
gonna do it
been
right now.
going up there and dumping part of it off and then going across the line.
Okay.
I don't know what they're doing now.
Okay,
Might not hurt to have
we'll
them check
call the
on
meeting
weight.
back to order. Brenda,
Yeah, yeah.
public hearing,
This is a time set,
supplemental budget.
set for a supplemental budget for, the general fund, commissioner professional services, 29,876. This is for, reimbursement for the LiDAR project that the county paid. We were reimbursed by Nyman. And this is just giving us, budget authority, pay that bill. And then the sheriff's equipment is 22,390, and then the capital assets is 144,000, and this is from carryover from last year. The vehicles did not come in until this year, so just supplementing that to pay for those vehicles.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the body of the audience that wants to speak for or against these items? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and offer it to the board.
Motion approved.
Motion to approve, I'll second it. Discussion?
Yeah, I was just wondering that you said the 144,000 is for vehicles?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
Randy?
So this is in general fund now that we're moving over from 2022 to 2023. And the capital assets, 144 is vehicles as well as the 22.
The capital assets are the vehicles. The 22,390 is for like all the putting the
Oh,
radios and the
okay.
decals and all that.
Security
stuff.
and
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So it comes out of two different funds.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
All right, John, I think we are ready for you, sir.
I have the 3 permits for the up by the Powder House Pass. The first permit is for the water line that we talked about a while ago, where they were going to put the water line in with the other water line from the Deer Mountain Sanitaries. I got them to move their water line further to the south, and also they agreed to bore under the road as opposed to trenching across the road and casing. So I've got those. I recommend that we approve them. They've done everything that we've asked them to do.
Motion to follow recommendation.
Second.
For all three.
Well, this is
I'm
for
waiting
the
to hear the
2.
rest. I guess it was the
That's
one I
just
just heard him talk
that's the
about.
bore in the water line. Okay,
Which one is that? Is that domestic water line?
the what?
The domestic water line?
Yes,
Who's the applicant? Did that get a second yet?
it's Black Hills Development.
Yes. Trying to get
I'll second the motion. So.
Richards.
Okay, all right. So, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead.
I'm confused because you said it was Black Hills Development, and then you said it was a sanitary
No.
district. So which is
My explanation was that the water line, this is the water line where they were going to put it in the same trench as the Deer Mountain Sanitary. If you remember, we had an issue with that. I've got them to move, the Black Hills Development people, I've got them to move their water line further to the south, so it's outside at the edge of our right of way and not in that same trench as with the sanitary district.
And they are boring it.
and they are gonna bore it under the road.
Thank you.
Okay, further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve those two permits, will say aye.
It's just a one.
Just a boring.
It's a right of way, occupy right of way and to bore, so there's actually,
There's technically two.
That's what I thought.
Oh, okay, that's on the
The
same
third
application.
the third permit is for the culvert project for their drainage issue. And again, they've done everything we've asked as far as getting the road width recognized, adjusting their pipe length to go along with our existing pipe length that is in that location. The only thing that I still haven't really heard from them, and that was the reason for this. They got their spillway and a retention pond. It's because of the development they do have in their master plan for this fourth phase, but the detail is not in the master plan for this. They have done everything we've asked, so again, I'm recommending that we go ahead and let them do it with that stipulation that they keep the road width as is and don't narrow it.
Okay. Randy?
I have some issues with this. Is there anything besides the pipe and the flared end sections that are in our right of way? It looks like there's riprap and other items in our right
Yep,
of way.
it looks, they were gonna have some riprap on that spillway.
The only way I can support this is if we have additional language that they are responsible for maintaining all those assets in perpetuity. We shouldn't be maintaining their riprap
agree.
or their flared end or sloped end sections. That should all be on them. And so either we get it out of our right of way, they extend the pipe far enough to get it out of our right of way, or we have an additional agreement. We don't want to see what happened up at McGuigan by Top Shelf, where we have all those assets in our right of way that we didn't really know were going in. And now we're going to have a quandary of who has to repair them. So I won't support it unless we have that type of language in there. And that's on the one that has the spillway drawing on it.
Is we gonna hold it up until then, or what's
Isn't that language in here? I mean, like when they put a power pole in the right of way, don't they have, when they have a permit to occupy, isn't that considered their property and they have to deal with it?
Well, there's one section on here that says installation, maintenance, and repair of said facilities, together with all future adjustments, maintenance, and repair, not interfere with or impair construction, repair, maintenance, or use of the highway, et cetera, et cetera. That covers it exactly.
When I read through it, we really haven't had one like this for a while. And it talks about them moving it for our construction, but it's very unclear about who takes care of what, in my opinion.
I do know that their retention pond and everything, the majority of it's outside of our right of way. It would be just the pipe,
And the riprap.
the flared ends and the riprap. That's correct.
what's your recommendation?
Well, I recommend that we approve it, but I do think we should go with Commissioner Divert's idea of making sure that we write in there that they have to maintain anything that's in the right of way.
So I would make the motion to approve with the stipulation that our legal counsel and the highway superintendent get the language they want about maintenance.
That's like that.
Sure. Paragraph 10 does talk about indemnification for any kind of repair or maintenance done by the utility, but not specifically about their obligation to be solely responsible for maintenance and keep it in good repair.
Mr. Chairman, this speaks to utilities, not structural pipe, in my opinion. It's fairly
Is
generic.
everyone familiar with or understand the language in the motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion as stated, will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The chairman is authorized to sign that at this time. We won't deliver it until we get the language worked out, or you want to just hold it. I got these other two here.
Say dispute that.
Okay.
Wait, no, hit
You
me
wanna-
again. Sorry,
He doesn't have to deliver it.
I know it. I
You have one
yeah.
more, right, John?
That's it for those.
Well, I didn't make a motion on the second one. Mine was only.
That was the first. The first motion you made, I thought was for both.
No,
The
there was
domestic-
two.
The domestic water line to do the permit to activate a county highway right away and bore
Bore it
underneath
was I.
these work together.
Yeah, so the one I just made the motion on
It's for
is
the
this one.
stormwater.
Yeah.
Stormwater one.
And so still outstanding is this one for the pipe.
The water.
We did-
That was
Okay.
included in the
First one.
Yeah,
Well, my mistake. I thought we voted on those two together.
permit to occupy.
So we voted on these two
You get a
together.
boring one
I
and an
thought we did.
occupy.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're good to go.
Yeah,
I had some questions.
Is that all you have in front of you for permit?
that's it for permits. I do have, from Game Fish and Parks, this agreement for the, mag chloride work up on Rough Block Falls that just needs the chairman's signature, and then I need to have it back so I can get it back to them, so their parks director can sign it. And this is for them to pay for the chloride work that we do up on Rough Block Falls. And also, we have our graveling plan, but we're gonna postpone our graveling plan for Rough Block Falls because we're gonna try to get them, they're gonna try to get funding for that as well, so.
Randy?
Does this mag cost cover the labor and the mag or just the
Yes,
mag?
last year, the bill was $6,881.48, and we sent that, and they paid 100% of it. Up to $8,000 is what their contract is. Our mag did go up a little bit this year, so it'll go a little bit higher, but we
Yeah.
should still be able to come in under the 8,000.
Okay, what's your pleasure on it? Your
I'll move
recommendation.
they accept the $8,000 project with the Game Fish and Parks.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Randy?
Is that your recommendation?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Prod me, everyone's.
Are we, Mr. Cosell?
One more thing while you're signing it. This is for what this is our contract for our chip seal project. I need a signature on that.
Previous authorization was given, right?
Correct.
So we don't need to take any action on that?
No.
That pen quit working.
I'm starting to put pens at you, Bob.
That was my favorite pen, Bruce.
At least we don't have Alan here clicking his.
I made the
Uh,
requirement quick and easy.
there's that.
Okay. Mr.
Don't
Cosell,
click
you
your
wanna
pen.
Come up and join us at the table here?
Yeah, that's right. You get going.
And if you want to, your backup support can also come up if she so chooses. If you'd introduce her.
Yes, I'd like to
I'll need that.
introduce both my staff here. First,
The one you signed. The contract.
Brandon Taglioli. Brandon's the assistant forest engineer, station Spearfish. And then we have Val Jagum, who's my lands and staff on the district. So they're here to provide the technical support on things that I can't answer. And so I may turn around if they ask for any responses. that I
Okay.
can't do. So.
Well, you have the floor.
Well, I was invited here today to discuss about opportunities of applying for funding, potentially for the Kenton Road, as well as discussing maybe backing up a little bit about further easements, what does that mean in terms of the board, if they have questions. As well as potential funding opportunities and grant opportunities that we have that can support maintenance, improvement of the running surface, drainage, those types of things. So I do have some copies that I should have got to you guys earlier, but we just were doing some research yesterday of a further easement that was recently completed. Got many copies here for this. So, with Cook County was just completed last year for the easement and what it entails. It's pretty basic. What I would say is for the easement really depends upon what the grantee would like to accomplish. In terms of the easement width. what they would want to accomplish within that easement. That then we take basically what is requested by the requesting body. We take and look at it and then say, yes, we approve what is being asked for, and then we conduct the environmental analysis. And ultimately at the end, what's granted is an easement to that body. And so I'm here to basically answer any questions that the board may have concerning easements or other type of instruments that may be out there in terms of maintenance of roads, road systems. So I would turn it over to the pleasure of the board. Maybe John has something
Your
to add.
easements, would that include tree removal?
Tree removal, we up to less than 5 inches, there would probably be an operation and maintenance plan that would discuss what grantee would be allowed to do. Anything over 5 inches, we'd probably get involved in terms of commercial product that we could sell from it. We would go ahead and probably issue timber sales if there's sufficient quantity to do that, to capture that wood biomass out there. But we would retain the timber yet, but if the grantee requests we need to manage timber along the road for whatever it may be, we would work with grantee to accomplish the desires as well as retain some of the scenic integrity of it.
Okay,
But accomplish it for public safety and so forth.
the reason Steve was invited here is we found out that through visiting with Steve that there's possible federal funds available to support this project, and so we thought it would merit looking into it and the explanation. So that's why Mr. Cosell and his team are here.
We currently have an open grant period for Federal Land Transportation Program. Is that correct, Brandon? And it's due by the 28th. Oh, March 30th. Okay, March 30th. And that would be for projects in fiscal year 25, federal year fiscal 25, correct? So basically, we go through a competitive process within our region, which there's approximately 7 million.
There's a bunch of categories, but let's say for this one, there's
2.5 million that we would compete region-wide for. We've been discussing with John, we got some preliminary ideas. So, in terms of putting together a grant application, I think we probably need to maybe converse a little bit more with John and, at the pleasure of the board here and how you guys would like to proceed. We can probably wrap things up if the board desires for us to submit a grant application.
Andy,
Does the grant include construction design? Or how do you apply the grant?
Well, we would apply for the grant through, it depends on what you wanted to have happen up there. So with the road in place, there's lots of vehicles, there's lots of ways to accomplish the work. We could apply for funding, assume we get it, we could form a cooperative road maintenance agreement. Forest Service could transfer that money to Lawrence County accomplish the work. That would be one way to do the work.
So the Central Federal Highway does not have any skin in the game for design or construction through this grant program?
No, we can do it that way, but I don't see the design needs here unless again there's
Major reconstruction. The road itself is, pretty decent shape. It just needs, gravel and some tree removal.
and what we're talking about is that for this part of it, in my eyes, would be to go up just past Aspen Hills, right up on top where the road levels out. And that's the portion of road that I think we should consider.
Starting at the cattle guard.
Yes.
Yeah, the boundary.
Yes.
that's 3.9.
It's about 3.9 miles or so. Yeah, right around there.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, if I could continue. So do we have a cost estimate for that?
Yes,
Ballpark?
we have our cost estimate. They've also came up with a cost estimate. They've adjusted for inflation. Our cost estimate for the first 4 miles is, roughly 70,000 a mile. So, and that's the cost of gravel, the cost of hauling gravel, shaping and watering of the road, and then also the chloride. He's done this is what Alan did right at the end there, and I think he gave you guys all that. Brandon did one that he adjusted for inflation of the next, for the 25 when he feels.
And what was your total?
So I added some items on. So one item is signing. The signing is very minimal for a four system road. So I added in here engineering study for the signing and then installation of the signings, possible culverts, some of the things that Alan had looked into. And so for the first 4 miles, assuming inflation, I have $470,000.
So you were thinking of applying for a grant of $500,000?
That would
Something like
be,
that?
that would be what we would consider based on the additional items of drainage and signage and adjusting for inflation.
Would the grant then be contingent on the right-of-way changing hands? The easement, or would it stand alone, or would we do that at the end of the construction, or how would that scheduling work?
Well, I guess in my mind, the goal would to make it palatable to all parties. And so when we apply for these funds, to show there's a benefit that once this is worked on and made into a condition that was acceptable to the county, then if we were to convey the jurisdiction and maintenance, that's a positive thing. And then the positive item in your eyes is that the estimate that Alan worked up, we wouldn't be expending those funds. Lawrence County wouldn't be expending the federal government. So does that make sense?
Yeah, and then when the federal government does that upgrade, do they follow the guidelines of the slow speed highways that the federal government uses, or what guidelines do they? What level are we reaching? Are we just putting new gravel on it, or are we making it meet a certain standard?
We're making it to a level 4 standard.
Yeah.
Level 4?
Yeah, that's a level 4 road. That's what currently it is.
Okay.
We wouldn't be upgrading the standard from where it currently is. Just be enhancing the prism.
Basically a resurface.
Resurfacing the road and reshaping
And
it so it sheds water better, and so forth.
So there's no major culvert work?
I don't think so. The last time we went and looked at culverts, it was pretty decent. We didn't. That's why Alan never put any culverts in when we went and inspected it the first time. We didn't think there was going to be a big need for too much culvert work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Mr. Slate.
Yeah, the road is terrible rough on that, but it also, just besides gravel there, if you gravel it and mag it, why you increase the speed of the traffic. The speed of the traffic is faster than it should be right now. But it'll be a dangerous road then, and it needs go to that degree of fixing. Well, you need to fix some of the corners so that they're not so sharp, and that, so that they are a little wider too, probably. And otherwise, if you just are going to fix it there, I think it's going to be worse for public health than it is right now. And it looks to me like, anyway, I travel at least once a day most of the time, and sometimes more than that.
Speed is always one of those things. It's, the county, if there was an easement granted to the county in conjunction with this project, county could post it at its desired speed limits, enforce those speed limits, much better than the Forest Service.
I'm sure they could,
but it's still not going to stop the speeders. You're very correct there, Commissioner. It's problematic on pretty much every roadway that we have, and I just don't know how to take up with that. It's it's one of those roads that everybody drives. If everybody would drive it at 30 miles an hour, you wouldn't feel too much, but everybody wants to drive it at 45, 50 miles. Yeah.
And there's a couple developments that would really benefit from this that been a little bit of discussion that possibly maybe they can help pay for the mag and have a little bit of skin in the game to further help with the cost of this as well.
The ongoing costs.
Yeah. Richard?
They did agree, the landowners from Aspen Hills down agreed to buy all the mag and stuff a couple of years ago, and wanted the county to put it on and that. So, and once you start a deal like that way, you just will go all the way through, because there's gonna be people on up further that want the same thing as the people do down to Aspen Hills. So we just about got to do that, or you think we got trouble with people coming in from other roads the county has? Why, that'll be a continual deal. And is it going to end up like 231 there, where it was Forest Service Road, and we thought they were going to take care of it, and all of a sudden they dropped it in Denver, and we had to take it over or something. It's pretty fresh. That makes adds the cost up.
Well, one thing about this grant, what we can do, I mean, we're I think at any point in time between now and the actual granting process, we can modify, withdraw. It'll kind of go through the process here. Modify it or withdraw it, based on the commission's desires. So.
Well, my eyes that we're just taking a small bite of the elephant right here and trying to do something here to benefit that road. It's been talked about a lot over the years, and it's a very well traveled road in our community, even though the Forest Service owns it. I thought it was worth possibly seeing if we could get some funding to maybe care part of this. So, Randy.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, you can apply for the grant, you need our support to make it more successful, or do you need us to apply for the grant? How does that work?
We apply for a grant.
Okay, but having us supporting it gives it more credibility in the competitive part of the region.
Right. And it's receive more support if the county, if we do receive funding that we pursue in the easement, such as bird easement, that the maintenance of the road then is turned over to the county that's at that point.
I think it's one step at a time. I think if we can help get the money, you can always give the money back if you don't use it. It falls apart, right? So I think we should try to get the money, and then we can move from that point forward.
As Mr. Cosell said, this is basically 2 years down the road to even see if we can get the funds.
Yeah. And that,
so I thought it was worth looking into.
In that same vein, at the same time, we internally, if it's the wishes of the commission here, we can start a project that basically we would fund internally to do an environmental analysis for granting of the bird easement to catch up potentially when the funds would arrive, based on what the commission wants to do with the road in terms of maintenance and any other reconstruction, what width of a right of way or the easement width that you're looking for. We can do that through an environmental analysis. And once that's complete, the only other cost would be for the county to plat, whatever section that we grant the easement. If it's 3.9 or a little bit less, but then the easement would be recorded here.
And is a 100-foot 50 from center both ways something that will work?
I preliminary discuss it with the forest engineer. Typically we go 66 feet total, but it's a higher standard road. We would have to probably look into that, Mr. Chairman, and something that we probably need some feedback on the county on what they desire in the easement, what they want to accomplish within that easement width. You know, if there's any reconstruction desires that we can also include in there. You know, basically the easement that we have with Woodford County is for maintenance of that running surface and some minor reconstruction.
Brandon?
Well, briefly looking through the easement, I think if you're doing an environmental study that you need to have the ability to go out far enough with your study, because on this road, a lot of those slopes exceed that 66 foot. And in the easement, it says we're responsible for that drainage and erosion control, so we want the rights to maintain those slopes if we do take it over. So I assume you'd go wide enough with your study that it would be all the improvements with the road plus.
Yeah, 100 foot. Typically in our analysis, we go beyond that. Okay. We look at, you know, various different resources beyond that 100 foot, just in case that, you know, say an easement is granted and 10 years, 15 years down the road, we need to do some major reconstruction for quarter mile, half mile. We may have the existing information, and we just do a quick NEPA analysis that we have to adjust the easement width in some form or fashion.
One last question, if I may. You have utilities in part of this that you allowed in, and that easement is between the federal government and the utility companies. Would we be on top of that, or how does that work?
We would still retain those easements for those utilities.
But it would affect what we do with the road.
Yes, we would have to coordinate with those utilities and so forth. There's no supremacy of one user over the other. We would coordinate. If there was any major reconstruction or needs to move utilities, we would coordinate with that utility group and accomplish the work that's needed. Typically, that's what it is.
Thank you.
Okay, further discussion?
Just a question on the environmental analysis. The NEPA work you would do would cover the initial project of regraveling the road. Do we need to keep the NEPA current then for continued maintenance on down the road, or how does that exclude something?
No, we wouldn't have to redo it unless there's a major desire to do major reconstruction.
So if we wanted to just cut some more trees in the right of way or change a corner, then we'd have to do new work.
We may have to do that, but however, if it's less than 3 inches, that would be, as part of the easement, there would be an operation and maintenance plan that, you know, the grantee is allowed to, you know, cut and manage trees within that right of way, and there would be some specifications to it that we'd all kind of work out. But when it came to the commercial side, we probably would have to do another analysis, but that's fairly quick. We have categorical exclusions that we can do within 2-3 months. You know, it's just planning ahead of what needs to be done. And especially if we do grant the easement, we'll have all the cultural work, which takes a lot of time. Cultural work already present, and we can use a streamlined classification with SHPO to get that work.
And that would include if there was dirt work to be done also.
Yes.
You can use the same exclusions.
Depending upon the amount of categorical exclusion. If it's major reconstruction, we'll probably have to look at it a little bit different, probably environmental assessment, but we're talking probably a major project. So,
which we could have if we had to change a corner.
Yeah, if you have to change a corner or something like that, we'll realign it somehow. That's major reconstruction. But minor reconstruction, you know, we'd have to sit down, you know, with specifications of minor reconstruction and just let's discuss what that is. And, you know, that would be documented in the operation maintenance plan within the easement. That would be discussed with the parties.
Okay.
Do you have a so much a ton or so much a load assessment for gravel replacement from the loggers? Is that right?
Yes, we do. We have we got a rock replacement fee that we charge. Yes, we do.
That would go away.
I don't know. That's a good question. That one, I don't know if a rock.
Well, yeah, once on a county road, yes, Forest Service would not collect those funds. However, having said that, there's, because of the condition of, this is my understanding, anecdotal understanding, because of the washboard and the condition of the road, there is not a heavy amount of loads coming down the road. They're trying to haul up north on 10. Would you agree with that? What you've seen?
Well, they've been using that road all the time. In fact, they're still using it now, not so far up.
Yeah, we got a little sailback there. I mean, when you get a little bit closer to Spearfish, I'll use the road, but typically, what we're seeing now are going south back out on that was a sales prior to being an insurmountability specialist, and they've been hauling pretty much adjustment to their haul routes. We will raise it to the mill coming down, but they choose to go a different way and just haul routes. It's just better road.
Is there any agreement with the recreation up to Big Hill parking lot?
As far as road maintenance, no. We currently maintain it approximately twice a year. And that's all we do. Usually do it in the spring and once later summer or early fall.
Okay, thank you.
John?
Well,
do
this
you
is
wanna-
our opportunity to get this. We've been talking about this road for a long time. This is our opportunity to get it paid for. That's the upside. The only real downside, I guess, as far as the highway department is concerned, is that it's the maintenance from then on. We're already snow plowing it. We do the snow maintenance on it, so that's kind of a wash. It would just be the chloriding of it, and if it's got good gravel and chloride it once a year, that should be, really a once a year maintenance on it at that point. So the yearly maintenance should be pretty minimal. So this is probably the opportunity to get it taken care of once and for all.
Okay, Commissioner Flanagan.
Now, it seems to me that chunk of road, it reminds me a lot of what we used to see, especially on that hill on the Homestake Road, going around that bend, that washboard just happens, gets in there. Some parts of Maitland used to be that way real bad. And in the last, I would say definitely 5 years, if not even longer, both those roads where the highway department has really taken time and magged it and turned it, rarely do they get like they used to. And it's that hill coming up out of Spearfish. So I'd say probably that first 4 miles or 3.9, I think that's the rough part. And I wouldn't be willing to take on all of that road, but I think if we're going to take on any, that would be a good piece to do. And I think that maintenance would be noticeably better in not a terribly long amount of time.
I agree.
Commissioner Dice.
Well, I'm still struggling. As you recall, in the 70s, Richard maybe remembers this, and maybe Commissioner Jennings, that there was a plan to improve this road from Spearfish to the church camp. And those funds never came to fruition, although some of them did come to the Exit 8 improvement and to the mill, and the piece from the mill a little bit to the south. But that money was then spent on Van Auker instead. And that was Central Federal Highway monies primarily, and then we took over our piece of that. So the model I would like to see is to build it right, maybe even look at paving part of it like they did Van Auker, and then the county maybe step in. And I'm just not past that was discussed back in the 70s as a primary route for natural resource management. And here we're taking over road, and then natural resource management will take place on it, and we're going to have to do the maintenance solely on that piece of it. So I'm struggling with that.
I understand your concerns. I myself don't support paving any of it. In my mind, county roads are gravel roads. We do a good job of it. So highway department does a great job of it.
But I do think we should try to go after the grant.
Well, and it's specific to this project, so they're not gonna turn around and use it on another road, correct?
No.
Okay. I support this time also. I think it's a step forward here.
Do we need a motion to have our support mentioned in the grant?
What do you need from us at this point?
I think we need where the commission wants to go, the board wants to go with the grant, and how we want to pursue with ultimately granting an easement or turning it over to the county if we do get the grant. So we can be timely with that work at the time that we get funding, so we can bring everything together to do the work, grant the easement, get the road in the shape, and then, grant the easement to the county for maintenance of the road.
Well, a motion from this board in support of it would certainly help you get the ball rolling for the grant.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. I'll go ahead and second it for the purpose of discussion. Richard, did you have a question?
Yeah, I know the road needs upgrade. It's terrible road. But, I spend a lot of money on repairs on vehicles driving over that road, but I would rather do that than spend money for people that got killed on there. And that's what's gonna happen with the better access, because no matter how many signs you put up there, it's not gonna control the speed at all. Or I shouldn't say at all, some of it on that. And perhaps you start on one part, why we're gonna be sitting here listening to group after group coming in to do the rest of it. So that bothers me a little. I should either do it or not do it. And that, so I would be for it, but I would like to see some written agreement between us and the Forest Service before we vote to do it.
Randy?
Well, I think this vote is just to support the grant application. That's what I'm
Correct.
hearing. So the rest of it we'll work on piece by piece. That's how I see it. Was
Yeah,
that
it's
your
gonna
motion,
take a
Mr.
while to
Flanagan?
get there.
That was your motion, Mr. Flanagan, to support the grant?
Is
Yes.
there like do you want to put like that for the first 3.9 miles or just one?
Yes.
Please.
Thank you.
Whatever the match there.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second for 3.9 miles to support Forest Service and applying for the grant for funding for this on Kenton Road. Does everyone understand the motion? Any further discussion?
Well, I'm gonna vote against it until I see what the agreement is between the two parties. And I'd like to see that. We thought we had a good agreement for 231 at different times too. Ended up, it didn't work that way.
Okay.
Is that right, Bruce?
I would agree. That was a little bit different though. I think that was a Schedule A agreement or Schedule B. I get the two mixed up now. What you're talking about here is something a little bit more involved.
A little bit more involved, that would actually outline, if you pursue it all the way to the end, there would be a documented agreement, which would be the easement, the operation maintenance plan. Part of it would be a signing plan for the road. All that would come, working with John before the commission to review. Subsequently, if the board decided to pursue an easement, that would be all.
Bruce?
So Steve, although I don't think we've ever entered into a cooperative agreement for funding a road project, the county has worked with the Forest Service to have a FERDA easement. So I think we have experience with that. For example, I think along the Maitland Road that allowed the county in that instance to go and do some reconstruction, maybe take out a curve or something, right? Of course, the Forest Service didn't contribute any funds directly to that, but you did have to do the environmental process and all that, right? You get all the NEPA clearances. So we have some experience with this, not exactly.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just say this is just to support the grant application. Nothing more,
right.
nothing less. So.
Okay.
For just so many miles.
3.9. All right, with all that said, all those in favor of the motion before us will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, I don't know if you're able to, at 9:45, if you are able to, the Natural Resources Committee is planning to present their Chimera comments. Okay, so
Yes.
just, thank you.
I'll hang around. Thank you. Yep, thank you.
It's, Roger's here to talk to you about, it's a follow-up, if you're ready for it, about the agreement to improve the section line. This is the little bit of section line coming off of the city road by the Our property.
Okay, we're gonna take a 5-minute break first.
Okay, 5-minute break.
And I'll be abstaining from this item.
I'm gonna turn the microphone off for just a little bit. Marlo, can you hear us okay? We're back online. Thumbs up.
I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Thank you.
All right.
Roger, you have the floor.
Good morning, thank you. What I've brought to you today is a request to amend an agreement that the county entered into back in 2018 with a former client of mine, Black Hills Forest Acres, which owned the property that is now owned principally by Keating Resources, the Spearfish Mountain Ranch property. And you may recall back in 2018, we came and asked for permission to improve a stretch of section line highway that extends off of the Crook City Road going east, 1,240.66 feet, because that would then get to the end of an easement that was already in place across Patrick Hour's property to provide access to the southern end of that Black Hills Forest Acre property. The agreement that was entered into with the county at that time required that at the time of improving that section line, that we had to create a road district to take responsibility for the maintenance of that section line and the remaining roads going north. Subsequent to Keating's purchase of this property, the roads that they've put into their development are all private roads. And so we're asking the county to allow an amendment to this agreement to still allow for the improvement of that 1,240.66 feet of section line, but not require that a road district be incorporated. Keating's will still be responsible for maintenance of that section line road, but the real advantage here, frankly, is to Patrick Hour. Patrick's property, as I said, is subject to an easement that would allow traffic to come off of Crook City down the section line and go north up to the southern end of this Spearfish Mountain Ranch property. By not requiring a road district, we can keep that easement private. And so that the only public stretch will be that portion of the section line itself, and will reduce significantly traffic that may otherwise travel down the section line and then across Patrick's property up to the southern end of this property owned by the Keatings. So that's really all this agreement does. The section line can only be improved to county standards at no obligation to the county for purposes of improvement or maintenance. And as it provided in the original agreement, should the road cease to be maintained in the manner that the county believes it needs to be maintained, the county can close the road or put up a minimum maintenance sign at the road, which was always in the prior agreement anyway. So that's really the nub of what I bring to you today. And anyway, Randy left. I was hoping he'd at least stay in the room, but he provided the property.
No, he's right here.
He just walked in.
Okay, he provided the property description to complete the terminus, if you will, of where this easement across Patrick's property extends, which then extends to the Keating, Spearfish Mountain Ranch LLC.
I think we may need to amend the amended legally, but we'll work on that. Subject to that, it's not
What Randy told me, yeah.
Richard, what kind of a development is the Keatings, are the Keatings gonna have? Is it a small lot development?
No, these are big lots, Richard. They're most of
40
them
acres.
at least, yes. And then the piece that Alec Keating is retaining, which this is what will provide access to, is actually about
Just under 500.
just under 500 acres. And he doesn't have any plans to develop that, so he wants to keep it as a big tract.
There was 1,300 to begin with.
Well, they're altogether, the Black Hills Forest Acre property was over 3,000 acres. Yeah. In fact, what you'll hear, the zoning amendment change that I'll come to you with in a little bit is part of that original purchase, that 100 acres that's to the very north end of all of this. So, but most of the lots are 40 acres plus, purchased by individuals.
Okay. Bruce? I was going to ask what Mr. Alkett has concerned about the request.
Roger, so there are the rafts have the ability to use that easement as well, correct?
I think that's correct.
somebody
Bruce.
does.
Yeah, it's been a while now since I've looked at that easement, but nothing has changed with that easement from the day back when, which was an easement that was actually granted to Black Hills Forest Acres before I ever became involved with them on their sale.
And the reason I bring it up is I'm just trying to sort of figure out in my mind. So if the section line would get improved and probably the easement gets improved to facilitate Alex's access or whatever, is that then going to entice others to want to hop onto that easement who have the right to do it and then get onto the section line? And so I don't know if it makes any difference for the analysis here, but I'm just trying to think of, are we going to end up with a subdivision road out there? And so then folks are going to come in and they're going to want, I don't know, I guess the worst that could happen is that they were going to want the county to add that part of the section line, that section of road to the system for maintenance. That's probably from my standpoint, the worst case scenario, if it would ever come to pass. Does it make sense?
In the prior agreement and this agreement, both has a provision that says that in the paragraph 4, in the event any person or entity in the future seeks to have the county add the portion of section line under consideration in this agreement added to the county highway system, they shall follow all applicable statutory and/or county regulations at the time such application is presented. So it would have to come back to you to be added in that manner, but we're not anticipating or envisioning that happening.
So I think that'd be the process in 31.36 through 9, the petition process.
And that language is identical to what was in the prior agreement that the county signed off on in 2018.
I would add that this is very similar, I think, if not exactly the same, to the Castelloot and Anderson agreement that you entered into up in the North County, where you allowed the private landowners to come in and sort of improve the road. Of course, that's probably going more towards arguably a dead end area. This is a little perhaps has a higher propensity for being developed in the future, maybe.
I don't know. I've not heard Alec Keating talk at all about developing his 500 and some acres that this would provide access to. They have developed north of that, put in blacktop roads, water systems extended from the city of Whitewood, and it's a very high-end development. That's why they've kept the roads private within it. So,
Okay. Commissioner Flanagan, did you have a question?
No, I wanted to get instructors.
Well, I was just wondering, is he planning on annexing some of it into Whitewood?
boy, I've never heard that
Never heard
discussion.
that either.
No, and I think there's some intervening land.
Is there something?
I think so, between Alex 500 some acres and the city of the Whitewood
that
city
makes a
limits. Yeah, they don't border right up to one another.
Okay.
We got a question in the public out there. Would you like to?
Private citizen.
question?
Private citizen.
Citizen Divert would like to say that the Whitewood did has done 2 annexation studies in the property, but this is servicing is not in those annexation studies. They went further north. Also, I'd add that physical terrain that this 160 acres is, it's so steep, it's not practical to access the other property from the south side because it's so steep to get up the hill. That's why this 160 acres is set up the way it is. And the dissolution agreement between the original Black Hills Forest Acres people set this easement up. That's right. It's the private easement between the RAS exiting that group and the Black Hills Forest Acres as it came out of that dissolution. So this is 35-year-old and 30-year-old.
Yeah, it was oh shucks, what was the last name?
Wolf.
Yes,
Wolf, Raft,
correct.
and Grass.
Right. We're all in a partnership that own
Yeah.
a big chunk of land, and they end up splitting up.
Okay. Chris.
Well, I think John's going to talk to you after this matter is resolved about adding signs that say county maintenance ends or something like that. And this may be a candidate for that, where Alex takes over, perhaps at some location where we indicate that it's not our maintenance anymore. So maybe a really good example of that.
That'd be just fine.
Fair enough.
Yep. And again, I would stress this, that at the time that the section line under consideration would be improved, it has to be improved to county standards. And it has to be approved by the county highway superintendent before it can be open to use. So,
Okay. Brendan.
Do you see any issues with approving this amendment?
I'm more comfortable with a road district for some reason that I can't necessarily articulate, but I can say that what we're doing here is, I think it's allowed by law. That your exposure again is going to be limited to that 1,900 feet, I think, and so 1,200 feet.
I've got the same little tickle in the back of my head. Do you have any issues with the amendment to this agreement?
No, in fact, all the laws that I went through here, as long as we can keep this road in a minimum maintenance scenario or a no maintenance scenario, it doesn't really affect us either way. But yet, a section line road is deemed a county road if it's improved. So it's up to you guys to take a county road that's improved and make it a no maintenance or a minimum maintenance road.
So yeah, essentially, this one's going to be maintained. It's going to end up being a dead end where the traveling public has no right to pass by a certain point because then there's this private easement. And so unless that changes, this is a road to nowhere. And so again, that helps alleviate my concerns to some extent. And the discussion about the topography being pretty steep as well kind of presupposes it won't be extended.
So you're gonna have to have a lot of signs to tell them it's a no maintenance road.
Probably just one.
Just one.
If it's minimum maintenance, it's only required at either end that can be accessed. In this case, it would be just the one end.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? I'll second it. Further discussion? Seeing no, Richard?
No,
Okay.
as usual, I'm thinking about it one way or another.
Well, I've got us waiting again, so I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
We'll get the legal resolve too.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
I'll rely on Randy for that, and then we can just attach it to this agreement, Bruce.
Thank you.
And then once we have the legal attached to the agreement, let me know. I'll get Keatings to sign, and then I'll get it back to you. If that works, or we can do it the other way around, however you want to do it.
How about you just go ahead and we'll get the legal worked out and then maybe have Keating sign and send it out to me. Yeah, please. Okay. Thank you.
All right, will do. Thank you.
Mr. Ewing, if I could, I would just have the record show that I abstained because I prepared the written description.
Okay. One more item, John?
Yeah, one more quick item. This is nothing to vote on. I just want to make you guys aware of it. And this comes down back to the signing, our sign project that is going through on our gravel roads, which is, I think it's slated to be done in 24, but they are submitting to Pier. And it has been brought to my attention about the roads that have county maintenance end signs on them. We have some that do and then some that don't. And I've got the list of roads I gave you are the ones that we've decided that probably should have county maintenance ends or end Lawrence County or however it works out, whether it be at a development road or a state line or a county line. This is the roads that are on the list that we believe that should have that. This is Bros Engineering is working on this. They're getting ready to submit it. I just wanted you guys to be aware of it. So if all of a sudden signs popped up on these roads and you get a lot of questions. So I wanted you to have that list of roads.
Thank you.
And that's all that's really, I don't need any vote or anything on it. I mean, we'll have to wait and see what the state comes up with. And then one thing that we didn't talk about, I didn't get a chance to send in, I got this yesterday, and this is a grant study that we applied for. We got the grant study. So we got a $250,000 grant, 50 of which is ours. So, well, it's $200,000 grant, then we're responsible for 50, so it's a total of 250. And it's the list that we gave them was a little broad of what we want to study. It's they said about 2 weeks before they'll have an agreement put together to present, and that'll give us some time to think about what areas and what we want to accomplish with this study.
Okay.
Give you a little time to think about it.
All
right. Thank you guys.
Amber, it's 9 o'clock.
It is 9 o'clock. We're gonna skip a little bit around here. I know Marlo is online right now with Jen. So if we can do the ETJ ordinance update, I think that should have been there on your board. So, first, do I need to do anything to this?
Where'd it go?
Are we good? Can you hear me okay, Marlo?
Okay, so
Or-
I think, okay, thank you. We just wanted to give you guys kind of a heads up with this is, you know, for, I don't know how many years now, even when Jana was still there, we were trying to figure out a way to work on that subdivision ordinance that we have in that joint jurisdiction area. It's a very old ordinance. It's been in place since the 80s, and we've just never had an opportunity to actually work on it. It has become a priority for the city of Spearfish. It is on their bucket list and also on ours. And so we are kind of at the point that I think, Marlo, do you want to explain kind of where you guys are at? And then we would have something for you guys hopefully in the next couple of meetings, what we're hoping for. So go ahead, Marlo.
You bet. So, I think as Amber already covered, that document is just pretty dated. I don't know that it's ever been updated since it was rolled out. Kind of big issues are that the approval process is way more onerous than it needs to be. And really our big goal in all of this is just to produce a document that is much more simplified than the existing agreement and just making things as streamlined as possible for the end users, the applicants and property owners. So yeah, basically our next steps, we've had a couple internal meetings on all of this, just kind of what are some big things that we need to make sure are covered within the agreement, what infrastructure improvements will be required. Your guys' zoning will continue to, it's your zoning jurisdiction, so county zoning will apply, and then we're working on specific infrastructure improvement requirements. Those will look a little bit different between the 1 mile and then the 2 to 3 mile areas. But our plan is to take all of that information to study session before the city council. We've got a study session meeting this week, but my plan is to take it to study session on April 12th. And then from there, we would make that same presentation to your team if you're interested. And we'll continue working with Amber as we start getting kind of the skeleton of this proposed revision put together. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear your guys' input and any questions or comments that you have as we start diving into getting this document a little more up to date to where it better serves the citizens and the city and the county. So.
Are you expanding the 3 mile?
No, it'll still just be the 3 mile.
Yeah, so I think we'll kind of we always have to kind of review this. So your 3 mile jurisdiction they can do based on law, but we have it's the ETJ ordinance area, so it's just that other boundary that we always have a map attached to, and we show where that boundary is. If it's less than the 3 miles usually, that's kind of that ordinance area that we are currently dealing with, the 1980s document that is just time to be updated.
Right. Well, I think Marlo, that it's time, and I appreciate you guys doing that. We've been asking for a long time, but just off the top of my head, there's a couple things. I know that you've recently discovered a statute that requires you to not have, or says you cannot have the authority to just pass those in your office, administrative authority. Maybe we can work on that statute. But secondly, I think the biggest dysfunctional part of the current agreement or ordinance is that the way the county views road right-of-ways and the way the city views right-of-ways, and when we're acquiring work to the master transportation plan and items like that. So I think that's what we really need to talk about, and our desires and your desires. I think if I had one thing that stood out over the last 3 decades, that's it. So.
Yeah, and I know Marlo and I've had lots of discussion where we'd like to see the streamlining come from is we have a certain boundary that maybe we follow more of the city, because it's within their growth kind of right around the city. And then Once you get outside that area, they would just strictly follow our regulations. So there wouldn't be a combined, it'd be either you do this or you do this, depending on where you're at, and we would have kind of a boundary map. It would probably be based off of the transportation plan a little bit. I know, we're hoping we can get one of those for the county too. I think he applied for that grant too, but I don't know if we've heard
Yeah, we
anything
just
on
got
it.
it.
That was the one that he
Yeah,
talked about. So hopefully we can do something there, and that will help kind of join the two pieces together. That's the goal, I would say. Would you agree, Marlo?
Yeah, yep, agreed. Randy, I think it's hard to tell who's talking, but I think that was, Randy, was that you that made the comment on right-of-way stuff?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something we want to dig into, and no, we're completely here to work with you guys on what the best fit is here. Keeping in mind that, yeah, this is eventually our future growth area, and we just want to be making decisions that are gonna, be in the best interest of future taxpayers and all of that. So, yeah, Randy,
So
if you want to, sorry.
Yeah, I think at this point, we'll probably just, you and I will be in touch on kind of what your schedule is, and then we can always bring it back to commission once we get through that, process.
Yep. Yeah, I think one thing that we really want to make sure that gets taken care of is fire mitigation plans too. There's not currently any standards within the 3 mile ordinance. And I think as we start basically looking beyond city limits, you really start getting up into the trees, into that wildland urban interface area. And it's important to keep in mind. So I think that'll be one of the only things that will be in there that's not currently in the agreement, but
Okay.
All right, let's,
I think that's all we have, Marlo. So thank you guys for hanging out for a little bit.
yeah, you bet. And if anyone has any questions that come up or thoughts that come up in the meantime, you're welcome to email me or email Amber and have her get in touch with me. So.
Okay. Sounds good.
all right, thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank
I
you.
Take care.
Go on down public hearing out of the way that was supposed to be 9:50. And that's,
You. Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
change zoning.
this public hearing involves a client of mine, so I'll be leaving the room.
Okay.
Well, don't leave the room, just sit in the audience. I might need to call on you.
Okay. So this one is changes on the request 358 for Spearfish Mountain Ranch. Roger was I would say, the helper of the applicants. Is that the best way to put it? So this is the property directly adjacent to the current, oh geez, I just Whitewood Forest Acres. And it's between the interstate and where Whitewood Forest Acres ends right now. Currently zoned agriculture. They are extending services from the city of Whitewood, but they will have, that'll be for water. Water will extend. And then the septic systems would still apply in there. And then basically location wise, it's right along the corridor, right between I-90 and that. So that's the location. You can see that on the map. With this particular one, they are asking to go from the ag to the suburban residential, which is directly adjacent. So that's what Whitewood Forest Acres is suburban residential already. I know that there was some question on the city. Well, the road district comes in, and they've had some agreements with the road district or looking at agreements with the road district.
We're working on that. In fact, we talked about that just a little bit before the meeting today. We're still in the process of working through the final verbiage on that. They had a change in lawyers. Their former lawyer retired, and so now it's in the hands of a new lawyer at Lynn Jackson, and I'm told that she has a couple of small changes she wants to make to the agreement. I haven't seen those yet, but I'm sure we'll get them worked out between now and the second reading.
Okay, well, I'll have you go ahead and add whatever you want to this, and we can open it up to the public as to the hearing.
I don't really have anything to add, Mr. Chairman. As you're aware of, my little spiel, I guess, at the planning and zoning was this is 100 acres, just slightly over 100 acres of currently ag land that's marginal ag land. There's no water to it. It's rather rolling topography. It's bordered on the north by I-90. on the south by this Whitewood Forest Acres development and the other Spearfish Mountain Ranch development, large lots that you can see on here. And then to the east is the city of Whitewood, and access would be off of this Oak Drive, and we are working through an agreement with the road district to provide a source of funding. Spearfish Mountain Ranch currently has an agreement with the road district to provide some funding on an annual basis for maintenance. This new 100 acres would be an additional agreement for additional funding for maintenance on that road. So I guess I would turn it over to this gentleman who can, I guess, verify that we've talked a little bit about the nature of the agreement and that we're still working through some of the verbiage on it.
Sure. I'm Dale Gregg. I'm a resident of Whitewood Forest Acres. I'm also vice president of the HOA and the president of the road district. So what Roger has said is fact. We have an agreement for access of Oak Street. And that's really important that we get that nomenclature correct. I keep seeing Oak Street and Oak Drive switched around, and Oak Drive is actually within Forest Acres. So it's Oak Street, which comes from the town of Whitewood.
Okay.
That agreement was for access into Spearfish Mountain Ranch. Okay, now there's another extension that's going into Wildflower, and the Keatings, they were going to set up separate LLCs and such, and I guess they have decided it's just not the time to do that yet because of the term of development, which could be, a year, 2 years, whatever. So what they've asked is, do we have access to that road right there? And so what we're doing is modifying the agreement, which will be controlled by Spearfish Mountain Ranch until Wildflower is actually set up. And then they will assign to those separate HOAs at the appropriate time. As Roger said, it's for maintenance, snow services, all winter services, and such that goes on there. So I guess as me representing my entities and then the public within Forest Acres, one of the questions, the fundamental questions that came up was, what was the decision criteria that there was no access in and out coming off of 90 off of the service road? That Oak Street would be the only access point to those two developments there. So the question was ingress, egress, fire escape, all of those kind of things. And people who were residents were expecting that this was the time that probably would happen. And I just want to report back to them, what the decision criteria was to not do that. Because we're looking at eventually between the two developments, possibly 100, new families coming in, and then all of that traffic, that road's going to get really busy.
Okay.
So that's just a question.
All right, well, we'll keep that question in mind. I'm going to open it up to the public. Is there anyone in the body of the audience that would like to comment for or against this on this hearing? Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so one more time, any public comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and offer it back to the board.
You want me to comment about access?
Yeah, try to address
Okay.
that question.
So at this
I mean,
point, we
obviously-
haven't looked at access. This is a change of zoning only, so they haven't even presented a plan for their layouts of lots.
Gotcha.
I-90 will not allow any additional access, I can
No.
tell you that. But
No.
what's there is what's there, that's all you're gonna get. So they're gonna then, the next step is, as they start the subdivision procedure, which is how they're gonna lay everything out, how the roads are gonna come in and out, all of that stuff will be the next step. They have not done that yet.
Okay. In the meantime, we're working on that agreement. It appeared that, for what you just said, there was never going to be any other kind of access coming off of 90. I just needed to be able to respond, to our public as to why that decision was made, and we'll finish this agreement, and that's what's going to happen.
Okay, well, this is just the first reading, so we're not going to act on it today, but is there any more discussion from the board? Richard?
Yeah, you can see that old road from the interstate, Oak Road, did you call and Oak Drive.
Oak Street.
Oak Street.
Oak Street. And
I keep getting it. Well, it's the railroad grade.
it apparently goes around this development. And some of it's owned by individual and the rest of it is a Whitewood City road. Is that right?
Oak Street. You
Oak
want me to-
Street, I think, was an abandoned county road.
Right.
And
It shows
went
up on
from
the map
state
as
to
county
the
right away.
County, and then it was abandoned, and then during the Forest Acres development piece right there, it was put into an overall road district.
Okay.
Well, Citizen Dybert, can you add to this?
Yeah, the Oak Street was the old highway.
Right.
It was state highway. It was acquired at the time that they built state highways and the counties acquired the road right of ways. So it is a county road right away with the road district right over the top of it. It was stopped because the interstate cut it off and rerouted traffic through the bypass and the overpass at Whitewood. So if you jump across to the north side of the interstate, the grade still exists. And at that time, that was Highway 1434 with the railroad alongside it. So it is county right of way with the road district right over the top of it until it hits the city limits. Then it becomes city street.
Okay. Thank you. Further questions, Richard?
So is that very much distance from the city to where it drops off on the city road? Is it half a mile or a quarter or is it very far?
Do you
Yeah,
know,
I don't
Randy?
have that exact number.
If you look at this, you can see the map here. Here's your city limit, stops right here. This is county, 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 all the way till you get up to here.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, these are also questions that will be ironed out later. This is just change the zoning. So we will take action on it next meeting.
Yep, second reading would be the April 11th. 9/15.
And just to be clear, we do consider access when changing zoning. You have to have access to
Well,
go
yeah.
to the density you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
But the
Just
detail
the
of it can be
layout.
ironed out
All right.
before those decisions
We
are
do
made.
Oh, yes. Yes, I
May
did.
may I ask a question? Now, at this next public, or at the next meeting, April 11th, will that be a public hearing as well?
No, the public hearing has been closed today,
closed that.
so it's just.
Can I participate by Zoom for that meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Instead of driving through
Yeah.
here? Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, Amber, we're gonna go back up to.
Okay.
Blue's.
All right.
Mr. Diver, we reach you into the kids table.
Okay.
It's like Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
You need to go to 9:30.
Oh, my gosh.
And I'm okay, I'm the applicant for that one, so if you want to finish the other one, I'm all right with it.
Well, in case there's someone here,
Okay.
we'll go to the 9:30 a.m. appointment. Public hearing and first reading, ordinance 22-04.
Okay,
Amber?
so lots of changes on this. This is the, we'll say the ordinance, kind of quick and dirty of it, of what the changes consisted of. Chapter 3, there was definitional changes for terminology, deletion of some unused definitions in addition to new definitions that are used throughout the document. Chapter 6, district regulations, multiple sections, so basically all of the zoning districts had maybe some change throughout them. We had the addition of an organization table, deletion of certain allowed and conditional uses in all zoning districts, addition, clarification of certain allowed and conditional uses in all zoning districts, updated plan unit development section, deleting the Mystic Minor PUD as it has been replaced with the Deer Mountain Village PUD in a separate document, update of the sign regulations based on the state law that Bruce disappears all the time, that Bruce and I have been trying to do. It's been about 7 years coming when that other court case came out that said we were required to change it, and we just have never gotten to it. So these updates are meeting the new Supreme Court decision that was not new, 7 years ago. That happened. We're finally getting there. Chapter 9, wastewater treatment. Basically, throughout the document, we had to update ENR to ANR with the name change. Remove inspection section because we are not doing that in-house. And then addition of a certificate of occupancy. We've kind of been doing it, but it was never listed in there. Building permits, clarifications of fees, additional required information, square footages, site plan, and written summary requirements. Chapter 15 and 16 have been combined for appeals and variances under the zoning board of adjustment. That's how you guys act is as the zoning board adjustment on those two items. They combine the procedure. Let's see, chapter 17, changes zoning, clarifications on the site plan and written summary requirements. Chapter 19, clarification on site plan and written summary requirements. Chapter 21, the fees, clarification on possible other inspections and additional fees. So that's the summary that we usually put together. This is what would get published in the paper. And then over time, we have to provide a copy online and then in the auditor's office as the official copy as it's going through the public hearing process. There were a lot of changes. I guess I'm gonna leave it up to you guys. You've sat through all the changes, Bob. You know, let me know where you want to start with it. Your call, the public hearing, so.
I'm just gonna open it up for any questions from the board.
Well, all of these are edits that I have questions on, but I don't want to go through them all at the meeting. 90% of them are on the inconsistency of mineral extraction in the different zoning districts. And the other 10% are less impactful, but there's an inconsistency between the zoning districts on what we're going to allow for mineral extraction, mining, and other things. And I don't think that was the intent, but as I read through it, that's a concern I have. Another one is just like they didn't renumber an item, typos, so they're insignificant.
Yeah, and those I don't do till the very end when we get ready to publish it, so.
I had mine aren't as elegant as sticky notes. I have notes on mine that are mostly just language and a couple of inconsistencies also. Okay. I don't know.
So I guess this is the time and the place to do that because I have to re-notify public hearing. I believe the changes, correct?
Yeah. Well, and so maybe I was thinking out loud here. Maybe Mr. Jennings and Divers visit with Amber and talk about their changes to see maybe they can be resolved, maybe they can't. But I think if there's anything, well, pretty much we're gonna have to start over again, right? There's a likelihood of that. But I don't know if today's the time to
No,
do that.
Well, just an example, if I may, Mr. Chairman. They call it automobile storage yard. And that's, do you allow them to pull trucks in, motorcycles in? You see what I mean? They're just, some of it's just language like that. And some of it has more substance.
Well, we need to do some more work on it.
Yeah. I know we can't, it's a public hearing. I
On
think
this
you have
document.
on this document. So if you don't like this document, you either need to hold the public hearing based on this or we start over. You can't, this is what was published.
Can't edit and then adopt it.
You can't edit and adopt.
And again, I'm assuming that there's probably going to be substantive changes that would require it to start over.
So I would ask that if the commission wants to go through this in detail, you set up a separate special meeting to do so, because you're not going to want to do it at a regular meeting. I don't think I can talk to just two commissioners and make changes on the document.
All right. What's the desire of the board?
Well, I think we deal with public hearing right now. I haven't had a chance to go through in detail. I just sort of skimmed through it. It looked like a regular document, but it sounds like there's more bigger concerns. I wouldn't mind going through more detail and then we vote on it next time. Vote it up or vote it down the way it is.
I'd just soon carry it on to another meeting. Okay, I got some questions here too.
Then I would ask that you set up a special meeting so we can go through them, or schedule accordingly at the next meeting to go through stuff. So I can start over, because if we keep pushing this off, we're never going to get anywhere. So I'd rather, if you guys have substantial questions and things, let's set up an actual work session to go through them.
Commissioner Diver?
Well, I agree with Commissioner Flanagan that we do have a public hearing scheduled today and that we should hear the public and get their concerns, and then we can make a determination at our next meeting of our course of action.
All right, I'm gonna open it up to the public right now. And is there anyone in the body of the room that would like to speak on the changes here? I'm not seeing anything. So one more time, anybody? Close the public hearing. What do you guys want? You want to Set up a special,
I think we need a special work meeting to work on this and not outside of our regular.
I agree.
Commissioner
I think in preparation for that, maybe that we can share our concerns with planning and see if it's just an organizational thing or if it's substantial. So when we have our next meeting, we know where we're at.
That would be my suggestion, having sat in Amber's desk, that you folks might be, it might be money ahead of the game to actually sit down and talk with her individually. I know what's going on here and why it looks like such a mess at this point, but that's how it is. Like I say, I need to go through it again, but I can do that. But before we actually schedule a special meeting, it'd be nice just to sit down and she can explain some of the setup and you can explain your concerns or get answers to them. She'll understand it better. But I would say we leave the second reading in place for now. Okay. Give everyone an opportunity to speak with the department on their concerns or specific, issues or whatever. Because it'll also give me more time to go into this in better detail. And then if we need to do a work session after that, we'll either vote no or reschedule a public hearing after those meetings. Does that make sense? Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to
No, that's
step on toes.
Well, I just want to say that it's a great job by both planning and zoning and the department. The devil's in the details. So overall, it's making it more compact, more efficient. It's just, I think when we did that, maybe we forgot to answer some questions.
So I would ask that, especially you and Eric, set up a time with me to come in and talk to me. I don't want to really do it over the phone. It makes it really hard to go through the documents. Same for you, Richard. But I would ask that you do it sooner than later. Don't wait till right before the next county commission meeting so we can actually do it and go through it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, so of course, again, there will be no decisions made at those meetings, but you'll be having a discussion about your concerns, and those concerns will be reported back to you at your next meeting, theoretically, right? And so if there's anything, above a scrivener's error, anything too significant, then we're gonna have to start the process over just so the public is aware. They're gonna have full opportunity to know what's going on.
Okay. All right, we're gonna dispense with that. And I wanna try to accommodate some of the people in the room. I wanna go to the 10 o'clock one with Hillary. If you wanna come up to the table and we'll address yours so that you can get on with your day.
I think that's fine. Right. I have one thing that I'm doing.
Just one thing?
Yeah. You've already done the other two public hearings.
Okay, go ahead, Amber.
That worked. All I had just for you guys to look at the review. I usually do this for you every year. It's a little late.
Okay, we've had that in our packet.
Yeah, you got that. Unless you have specific questions, I don't have anything on it. It's just I try to put this together for you every year.
Mr. Chairman, before she leaves, she did have another item on the subdivision ordinance update.
Yeah.
We could do that after the 10 o'clock because there is a couple of questions. Yeah.
You want to go through that?
Yeah, there is a couple questions with that.
All right. We kind of got way behind here. I'm sorry, everybody. Go ahead, Bruce.
Mr. Chairman, you might remember you received the first, I think, the first tranche of money pursuant to the National Opioid Settlement Agreement. You're expected to get another batch of money too. The amount is unknown. I don't think we know Brenda or the timing of it, but we're dealing with the first amount of money, which, as you can see, the document is a little over $25,000. There are limitations of how the money can be spent. We reached out to Hillary to introduce herself with Compass Point and provided her with some information and can you take advantage of it. And I think you'll see her cover letter dated March 21st is included in your packet, as well as a proposed settlement agreement or use agreement that she's already executed, again, subject to your approval here today. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would defer to Hillary to introduce herself and maybe talk about how she can use the money. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me this morning. My name is Hillary Schwab. I'm the Executive Director of Compass Point. I have been with that agency for, I think it'll be 7 years this coming July. Prior to that, I was working as a mental health therapist at Behavior Management Systems for about 6 years. And then prior to that, I was serving the adolescent population at Lutheran Social Services, Canyon Hill Center. So over the course of my years in the social service field, there's definitely an upward trend, as you guys are aware, of the opioid crisis. I don't feel like our cities and local communities are exempt from anything that's happening nationally. And so my request for the opioid settlement funds would be used for, I guess, specific curriculum. Right now, we don't target that population per se. We kind of run our programming like it's all in the bag kind of thing. And so we would really like to use this money to set apart the opioid users. Just for example, if one of you had, let's say, cancer, I wouldn't send you to a neurologist. You know what I mean? I would really want to just target this specific population and maybe start with the adolescents and the youth. Something else that I'm really passionate about is public safety. And so I would really have a strong desire to bring the community in and raise awareness, because the reality is these opioid users are out in the communities where we live, work, and play, and we're passing them on the highways. We're passing them on the interstates, and it's really beginning to be a threat to public safety. The other thing that we could do with the funds is add some detox and withdrawal services to our agency. Right now, it's a huge risk to keep these people with us right when they come in, because the risk of death is so high. So we need to send them out and refer them to other facilities where they can detox, so we don't risk losing them.
Okay. Randy.
I support what you're doing here, and I think it's a good use of funds. But I have a technical question.
Mm-hmm.
You have two offices, one in Sturgis and one in Spearfish.
Mm-hmm.
So one is in Meade County, one's in Lawrence County. How are we using the funds in our county, or are they mixed between the two facilities?
That's a really good question. So we have two buildings in Sturgis, and so that would be an outpatient building and then our residential inpatient building. And so in Spearfish, we also have an outpatient building. So when I talk about building up specific programming and staff development and things like that, we could certainly do that at both offices, but it's open for me to make the decision if I just want to do that in Lawrence County as well.
Follow up, please.
Go ahead.
Have you approached the Meade County Commission? Did they take part of the settlement too, or do you know?
No, sir.
They did not take part of the settlement.
I did not approach
them. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Eric?
Very admirable project, certainly a need that we need to have. I guess my concern is they have $25,000. It seems like a pretty aggressive project. Have you done a budget for this to see how much of it you're going to be able to accomplish, or do you think that's an adequate figure to do what you want to do?
I think that's certainly an adequate figure to do what I want to do. It wouldn't necessarily be an extreme, like for example, if I had to do some minor remodeling to accommodate detox and withdrawal, it wouldn't be beyond the scope of what we already have as far as baseline building materials, things like that. So I think it's definitely reasonable. $25,000 could definitely go toward curriculum that would be ongoing. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, Brandon.
Brenda, this money is very limited in scope for its use. Isn't that correct?
Yes,
You can only certain things, and this is really, I would say that this Compass Point is one of the few entities in our county that could even utilize the funds under the restrictions put in place by the feds. Is that correct?
That's correct. And Hillary was provided with there's three parts to the approved uses for these, and we provided Hillary with those, and she will have to provide to me so that I can do the reporting on it, on what she's actually going to use those funds for and how she uses them. So.
And it's a figure out how and where to use it or lose it, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Hillary, any concerns or issues? We shared some additional information yesterday about the accounting part of it. Any concerns about that being able to help us to be able to show exactly where the money went? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. I can work with my finance director and my bookkeeper to make sure that those allocations specific for these projects goes into that spreadsheet, the database.
And I should add, I did bring it up at DUI court, and there's a lot of carryover between DUI and drug court. And I think that my take was the consensus was is that Compass Point was a great place to send the money, so it could be used appropriately.
Mr. Chairman, what do we need to do? Anything?
So, Mr. Chairman, Hillary has already executed the agreement subject to your approval. So you're looking for a motion to authorize, I think, the auditor's office to cut the check to Compass Point pursuant to the terms of the agreement. Is that fair, Brenda?
We'll also have to do a supplemental budget to that, to the Compass Point line, so that we'll have to be a public hearing for that.
Okay.
And then the check will be cut out after we approve that.
I'll
Because
make the motion to do those two items.
Probably April 11th.
Second.
Okay, then motion and second, further discussion.
You basically accept the proposal and then set the public hearing for the supplementary budget hearing.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you guys for having me.
Okay, another small quick break and then we're gonna take up the Natural Resource Committee. Behind you as well, stay behind.
All we have to do is change the times on the agenda that we catch on. Pretty easy.
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I live in the land of no snow. I live in the land of no snow.
Yeah. What's that? I don't.
No fun at all.
You might as well go back upstairs.
That's
Be a while.
Richard, you probably have a lot.
That works.
It's gonna be a bit.
Not too much. Drops off at the timber line.
We still have good apartments.
Yeah. Giant graders. I was 2 feet up there. I was in Sioux Falls, they must have that much, or had that much in it.
I was looking at a horse the other day, and it was full of ticks.
Ticks.
And I thought that was really unusual this time of year. I just never had a tick problem. I mean, this old horse had 50, 60 big old ticks on it.
Wow.
But I did a little research, and there's a tick called a winter ghost moose tick. And I think it came in the hay. Have you ever heard of it?
Oh, no, I haven't.
You know, we buy hay
Just
from a hay company. I don't know where they get it. But it kind of concerns me, you know, they pull the hay out, drop it around these big round bales around the feeder, and then they lay in it.
And they're not that expensive like Pulaski's and regular fire shovels.
I've never had a tick problem with the ranch. It concerns me because, you know, they lay eggs and everything. You could
have more ticks. More ticks.
It's just the weirdest scenario. I was gonna call the state to see if they.
Did we pass a motion to that?
We did. We voted on it and everything.
Have I?
But I still got some half at age. Mama told me not to wait.
Yeah, that's a good idea. The other, part of that is,
Probably finish up at the end. We'll finish up at the end.
Yeah. Today.
You know, I treated the horse and they're falling off.
In time for lunch.
There'll be more.
Well, you got
what are we doing now?
concentrate.
Bob, you did a good job with the schedule. Public hearings, and stuff. You're not far off at all.
Okay, we're gonna go to our 9:45 meeting, Natural Resource Committee, Chimera Fuels Reduction. Who's leading that up? Mr. Colburn? Well, I'll give you a couple minutes, Bill.
Okay. Just one.
Couple.
Whoa.
It's a screw in, and I don't know if you screw it in, down, or.
It's gonna make me shorter than I really am.
You want the catalog to sit on?
No phone books anymore.
How's that?
I think somebody switched spares.
I think so.
Need
Anyway,
need some spares.
you know, unfortunately, as you get older, as you know, Rich, you claim to be 5'7", you're actually 5'6" or 5'5" or whatever. First of all, I think this is a culmination of this project, although we've been doing this for, at least I've been doing it for 30 years, since the mid-90s, on commenting, helping Lawrence County comment on NEPA projects developed by the U.S. Forest Service. This is really the first project that has come out of our cooperative agency agreement. And we're all learning about the process. And I think that's important understanding, is that we're all learning. I think even Steve would agree. It's going to be a process. And from my end of it, you know, you almost look at it as be careful what you ask for, because if you're going to do it correctly, you got to stay engaged. You got to stay engaged the whole period of time. And it's not an easy process. There's a whole bunch of competing folks, both in the county and within the Forest Service, about what should be done on the project. And again, that's I think another important part of this whole thing. And I do want to say I really appreciate being part of the ID team. It was certainly a learning process to me. It was hard for me to be engaged with them during the process because I felt like an outsider. But it wasn't that I didn't feel like the Forest Service made me feel like an outsider. I was an outsider, and we're all trying to get comfortable with where we're going to go with this. I think it's a very constructive process. I think by working with the county, or with the Forest Service, the county, and we've got some quality people. I do want to single out Paul Pearson and Mitch Iverson. They're both very astute professionals with great experience and knowledge, and they've helped the process tremendously and helped formulate the comments we've got here. The comments are fairly extensive. We tried to summarize them on the front, on our cover letter. Randy said it was too long, but we tried to reduce it from where it was, and this is what we ended up with. But as you can see, the comments are centered on a lot of different, or several different topics, and we tried to hone down on what those were. The Camara project's primary goal was to reduce the risk of the high and very high fire hazard ratings of this area. It had been identified by the U.S. Forest Service as one of 10 high to very high fire sheds. I think is it in the region 1 or is it
No, in this region.
in region 1?
In region 2.
Region 2. So it has a lot of high priority, and I know the Forest Service, that was one reason Steve wanted to jump into this, was to try to, you know, address those issues. And if anybody's ever been in that country, it's probably the right thing to do. With that said, there were a lot of things as we went through this and everything that we found that we'd like to recommend the Forest Service to do, to modify or to accept. Right now we're at the draft. Pretty much
As we've experienced in the past, there's not a lot of things we can do different unless something happens more than what I'm aware of to change things. Hopefully we can change some things. So with that, I'm going to just start to talk about, or I'm actually going to ask Paul Pearson to talk about the missed opportunities that we felt happened in this from the development of the Camara project.
Thanks, Bill.
Come on up to the table, Paul. Drag your chair up with you.
Mine's taller.
I'll sit next to the little guy.
Yeah. No, so thank you very much. We went through the information that the Forest Service provided, both during the scoping process, which was the initial dissemination of information to the public and the counties, and then this draft environmental assessment. And a lot of that is through mapping software, GIS analysis software, and aerial photos. And then Bill actually spent a lot of time on the ground verifying some of this stuff as well. So when we talk missed opportunities, it's important to frame that in the standpoint of this very high fire risk, fireshed area. And also one other caveat to missed opportunities is the process in which the Black Hills National Forest, and really all national forests, go through in developing a vegetative treatment project such as this. A lot of it is based off of their own vegetation data, which can be outdated admittedly by the Black Hills National Forest. And so when we say missed opportunities, it can be something as in mistyping a stand that could or should be reduced in its fire hazard rating, or prescribing reduction in stands that actually on the ground don't need it anymore because something's been done. But one of the overall arching themes of the comments here is flexibility. In order to really meet the purpose and need of their project, knowing that their data is not 100% accurate, we really push hard on the flexibility aspect of this. Being able to find the right location on the ground to do the right treatments to reduce the fire risk. And that's not in there for the commercial treatments. From the scoping document to the draft environmental assessment, about 4,000 acres difference in commercial treatments within the project area. Some of them are absolutely legitimate. A lot of them still show on their map as very high fire hazard rating, high to very high. We're not sure why some of those areas were dropped. And that's also described in here, just the ask to answer to the cooperating agency yourselves as to why some of these changes are made, why are they dropped. And we've also heard from Forest Supervisor Jeff Tomac the need to identify areas, to help them identify areas where to go for commercial treatments for our timber industry in the Black Hills. And there are missed opportunities within Chimera to treat more acres of commercial acres. And it's very important when you have an analysis area to maximize that, because once this gets signed off on, you don't go back later for 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 acres of missed opportunity. So in their own ask for help finding more areas, this is one that's under analysis that can provide additional timber resources, and those timber resources would meet the purpose and need of the project by reducing high to very high fire risk stands.
All right. Thank you, Paul. If you drill down through the comments, you'll see specific references to what Paul's kind of talking general comments about it. We also wanted to talk about cooperative agency process. And I was going to have Mitch address some of the things we'd like to see going forward. Like I said, we're both Lawrence County and the Forest Service are learning more about how this thing should work, and I do believe it'll get better. But there are some things that happened in Camara that actually created a problem of being able to help drive the project, maybe our towards the objectives and goals that we would have had in an earlier process. Mitch, do you want to talk about the cooperative agency process and why we have concerns about where we're at?
While Mitch comes up, I was going to recognize that Mike Whalen is here and Ron Moore are also from the Timber Committee as well. Okay.
Natural resource.
Natural resource, yes.
Introduce yourself for the.
Mitch Iverson, I'm long-term spearfish resident and member of the Natural Resource Committee.
Okay, thank you.
So to start off with cooperating agency process, it's often done on larger scale projects such as EIS. This is a environmental assessment, which is a lower level. So that thing, that aspect is a little different, and we do appreciate greatly the Forest Service allowing us to serve as cooperating agency. With that, you know, a lot of things went well. Steve came here a lot to our resource committee meetings, explained things, had a lot of maps, which are very important for a project like this. One thing that was very troublesome was that the Lawrence County didn't know about the project until the initial planning, and it was pre-NEPA, but initial planning had been going on for about a year, and that I think really did create a lot of problems. And so that's kind of a lessons learned, but I think we could have used that time to maybe spend some more time going out in the field. One thing I also think it led to a problem with the Beaver Park roadless areas was excluded. And if you know where the Beaver Park area is, it's adjacent to the I-90 corridor on the northeast part of the project area. So ecologically and geographically, it's really part of the project area. And if you look at the map of the Chimera project, you see this chunk that's excluded. And the fact that it's a roadless area doesn't mean that treatments cannot occur in that area. And there are existing roads in there already. So that was a big concern of ours. And that was carved out very early. And I understand it does create a difficulty in planning because it is a roadless area. However, as I mentioned, fuels treatments can still occur there. It's also an area that is mostly rated very high to high fire risk. So that was one thing we're concerned about to this day, but it's also something to carry forward with this cooperating agency process is the early involvement. The ID team, I think, was accommodating. We really appreciate that. I think they had, when I say ID team, I mean the interdisciplinary team, which is the foresters, the range people, the weeds people. So I think they did a pretty good job. We are concerned that a lot of the issues that we brought up as a resource committee were not addressed in the draft EA. So we're kind of confused about that. We talked about some of them in meetings here. We provided scoping comments, and a lot of those issues are some of what Paul talked about. But there's several others, like the Beaver Park one, as an example. So we're not really sure why they weren't at least talked about in the EA. And almost all EAs are written, like when someone brings forth an issue, the Forest Service has to decide, is it really a substantive issue? Or is it just pie in the sky or not relevant? And so they can throw out issues, but they are normally discussed in the EA, and the rationale for dismissing issues is discussed as well, at least briefly. And this wasn't done in this case, and I'm not sure why, but it's typically done in all EA level environmental analysis. So that's one of the major comments that's discussed in there. The flexible management is so critical, and we pushed a lot, as Paul discussed. You're never going to have the data you need. That's often the case. But we do need some flexibility, and I know there's some current concerns with having too much flexibility, but based on my experience, that more problems come up when you don't provide adequate flexibility. And since the Forest Service is requesting an emergency declaration, which would mean there would be no objections to this plan, no objections allowed because of the fire risk and the time-sensitive nature of it. We don't see any reason why there can't be flexibility for commercial treatments. And there is flexibility for prescribed fire and non-commercial treatments. So that's something we'd like to see resolved. So other than that, I would just say it's, we need to work on the cooperating agency process as we go down the road. There were a little bit of problems with getting updated GIS information and things like that. Not bad, but sometimes things were updated and we weren't informed, and so we worked off of faulty assumptions a little bit, and we figured it out, but it took a lot of extra work that way. So I'd say that's one other lesson learned, and I don't think it was intentional at all. I think with a project of this many acres, you've got constant changes, and it's hard to say, oh yeah, we need to update the county. So that's probably just another lessons learned. So that's really all I have.
All right, thanks, Mitch.
Mm-hmm.
Just to kind of, there's one other item that I thought we'd probably want to bring up during our public meeting here, was that there were several cases in the project with Camara where we believe that the Forest Service didn't sufficiently follow the forest plan in treating spruce for some reason, and I'm not sure yet, even being on the ID team, why spruce was excluded from all references to be treated. And the one thing we have seen, and I've seen it through my years on the forest, which is now approaching, I hate to say it, 50 years, there's been a lot of spruce incursions, encroachments into aspen, into meadows, into riparian areas, into pine stands. And in fact, the Forest Service readily admits that the current spruce coverage in the Black Hills is almost 2.5 times what was specified in the forest plan directions back in '97. In fact, they even have a spruce project that's been proposed to help reduce the spruce in some areas. And we're not talking about going into these mature spruce stands that have been there for hundreds of years. we're talking about areas where spruce has actually grown into other areas because of fire exclusion and non-management. And you can see it throughout a lot of the central and northern hills. And it was something we brought up during the IDT meetings, is the need to treat spruce. Like I said, for some reason, it was not at all mentioned. In fact, in several cases, specifically pine was the only species specifically referred to be managed in hardwood stands and in meadows. If spruce was not mentioned at all. Another element was in the forest, or in the Camara project, it talked about expanding hardwood acres, which if you're dealing with fuels, hardwoods, especially aspen and some birch, are basically somewhat a lot more resilient to fire than pine is, and spruce. And if you want to reduce the intensity of the fire and the ability of the fire to move through the forest, you want to have hardwoods in there because it'll slow the fire down and also reduce the intensity. We didn't find any areas or any types of proposals within the project to increase the amount of hardwoods. They talked about enhancement, which was in existing spruce or in existing hardwoods to remove pine, not spruce, but remove pine. But there are a lot of areas in there, and Paul talked about area of the problems with the FS veg layer, which is their inventory layer of what's out there. It's outdated in a lot of cases, and there's a lot of areas where it doesn't reflect what the true ground conditions are. And I found that there are many areas where if you looked at the stand, it's almost all hardwoods, but it was actually typed as a ponderosa pine stand. And to me, those areas would have been a natural to say, okay, we're going to make a hardwood stand out of this. It would change the typing, it would change the number of acres within the forest plan. That would be from pine to hardwoods would have been the easy one to do. Remove the conifers out of there, and you would have gone towards helping meet the purpose and need of the project. So that's another missed opportunity, and it was fairly throughout most of the whole project. I saw a lot of that. So I just think, again, missed opportunities and lack of flexibility are probably two of the big I think big lessons learned on this this process. And I think we all have learned something, and I think it's going to help us become better contributors going forward towards this process, and also the Black Hills Forest Plan revision process. I think we're all learning. I know I learned a bunch, and it takes a ton of time. I can just tell you, it just literally it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours have been spent on this project between all of us. And
Okay, Randy, you've got some comments?
Yeah, before I make a motion to move to authorize the chair to sign the cover letter, I just want to add a couple quick things, if I may. I look at this as the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is the hours that Bill and other members of the Natural Resource Committee put in on this, volunteer hours without pay. That's really good. And it's also, the other good is the Natural Resource Committee vetted a lot of comments from a diverse board, and I think that process went pretty smoothly. The good is the Black Hills National Forest, and especially the Northern Hills Ranger District, worked with us once we were engaged to really allow Bill to be on the ID team and to have that integration. So that's an evolving process, and I think we've taken a lot of big steps. The bad is the city of Sturgis had notice of this before Lawrence County, is my understanding, and we have the cooperative agency status. The bad is when I saw the map for these critical fire areas throughout the United States, this was identified, and it was before we were approached by the Black Hills National Forest, and it included the roadless area. The bad is the roadless area is not included. So, you know, region and the chief's office had the map, and they showed it at a conference I was at. The ugly is the no flexibility in the commercial timber harvest. We have flexibility in the non-commercial treatment and the prescribed burns, but no flexibility in the commercial harvest. And that's another tool. And I would think when you go to the plate, you need to have all the tools you can get to be successful. The bad is the emergency part of it, because if this moves forward without that flexibility in the commercial harvest, we won't have a comment again. So unless they adapt our flexibility, I don't support the emergency part of it. And the bad is if we don't have the flexibility, this is a 10-year operation and we don't have the flexibility to do what we need. So all that being said, I would move that we allow the chairman to sign the agreement and the comments, or the letter and the comments.
I'll second that. Okay, we have a motion and a second, further discussion.
Just a couple of questions. Is the Beaver Park burn area, is that included in this project, or is that part of the road?
Beaver Park.
That burn area, that burned like 30 years ago?
Well, there was a mountain pine beetle infestation in the late 90s in there, which is about 400 acres of the 5,200 acre Beaver Park area. There might have been a little bit of a fire in there, but nothing of any significance. But it does include about 400 acres of, and you can see it on a map, where the mountain pine beetle everybody says the mountain pine beetle infestation that we just went through started in Beaver Park. It really didn't start in Beaver Park. Beaver Park was an early chapter in that whole mountain pine beetle book, because of the stocking levels throughout the whole forest. It started popping up everywhere. The mountain pine beetles did not fly out of Beaver Park and flew into Norbeck or into the wilderness area, or flew south of Custer. Didn't happen. It was just one of the earlier parts where it started initially. So I don't know if that answered that question.
Yeah. I was probably thinking more of the pine beetle than the fire.
Yeah.
Fire area there also.
Yeah.
Sturgis. Yeah. Quite a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, further comments?
Can I offer one other comment? I think it's a really important part of this, and maybe I don't think it'd be part of the motion. I think it is really important that our comments don't get grouped in to general public's comments. And in fact, in our letter, we have requested that before this document is signed, the Camara document is signed, we want to have a one-on-one meeting with the Forest Service to go over our comments specifically so they can address them in a person-to-person meeting. And because what could happen is they could take our comments and group them with all the other comments in the public, and they could then answer one comment if our comments are the same of, Joe Public. And I think because we're a cooperative agency, because we are a cooperative agency, we deserve to be treated differently than Joe Public, and that we should have a specific one-on-one meeting with the supervisor and district.
Okay, I want to get this motion off the table here. We have a motion and a second to allow the chairman to sign the document. All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Any further comments, Bill?
No, thank you very much. I didn't know if the Forest Service has anything, or
Mr. Cosell, would you like to add any
comment.
comments? Okay.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay. That's Amber and Jeff to come down. Yep, there's Jeff.
All right, Jeffrey, we're ready for you, sir.
Ready?
A lot. Spent 30 minutes organizing my packets so I'd be in order for every
Flexibility,
Well,
just like this letter.
No place for it here. It's a government aid.
Thank you. Yep. Okay, Jeffrey, you have the floor. We're running a little late.
Okay, these won't take too long.
What's that?
Maybe you don't get down this.
I will fix that one.
At the very least, it's a heads up.
All right, we got some annual reviews to take care of. Most of these won't require any motions. This is for a second residence, 380-20 for the Winberg family. They're doing it, everything they need to be doing, just as it was amended last year, if you remember. There was a big to-do about that place. It's all going well, no complaints.
Is this 380-20?
Correct. And we will visit them again next year.
Okay.
CUP 402, second residence. Geez, I messed up. Didn't put the name of that one on there.
The cook.
But thank you, to Cook. Again, still being used as it was approved, no complaints. So we'll visit them again next year. 416, another second residence. Sherry Anderson. Parents are still living in the second residence as the conditions. We've had no complaints. 417, second residence, the Kissicks. Second residence now in place and being used as intended. There have been no complaints, so we'll continue to monitor them every year.
Okay.
459, this is Heidi Johnson on Turkey Roost. These are the dog and cat kennels. Conditional use is being used as intended. They're following the conditions and no complaints that we've received so far. So we'll give them another annual review next year and decide what to do with them after that. And the other one is for Lee Eddy, the manufacturing facility. This is in conjunction with Sawyer. Conditional use is being used as intended, no complaints. They're following everything. This is their first review. We'll do another one next year. Go from there on that one. So that takes care of these. The last one I have is for CUP 298-13. This is Mystic Hills Hideaway. And Bruce, you may have to help me with this one a little bit. You were probably more involved than I was. We have Mike here, who the owner of the place, and we have some folks there that want to lease it. I understand there's a lease agreement in place, and they want to talk to the commissioners about that. Bruce, do you have anything more I can?
So I think the idea here is that it's not an outright sale. It's more of an assignment of the conditional use permit. So I think our concept would be is that the current CUP holder, as well as the assignee, if approved, would also be bound by the conditions of the conditional use permit. But you're effectively, it's not transferring it at this point, but it's allowing an assignment. So then you're going to have dual responsible parties. When if the transaction ever does become final, then at that point, I think we do an official transfer of it, if that makes sense. So that's what Amber and I had discussed last week, I believe. And so, yeah, that's on the agenda for your consideration today. So it'd be an amendment to the CUP to add them as an assigned but and mutually equally responsible party.
Another responsible party. Can you remind us exactly what the CUP covers?
So
I didn't have the conditions or
okay.
anything in my packet.
The conditions had, keep in mind this is like 3 times this has been added to. So you started with the campground, and you have the rentals of all the stuff, you have the campground, then you have the extension of the campground. So basically it's the campground, just there's been multiple phases to it. And then the rentals.
This was the old Custer Peak,
Yeah, Custer Peak.
right?
Yes, the same,
Where
same
the
place.
trail, the snowmobile trail comes through, and you've been out there Hampton
Yep.
Times doing on sites and stuff.
Yep, and they have all the cabins are built, sites are in, they have the long-term sites in the back, and the, like, front areas, the seasonal sites.
If I might, is there any concerns from staff perspective on doing this?
It's just different, we've just been, normally it's a sale, so that's why I had just requested a copy of, the lease agreement. I felt like we should have a copy of that just in case. We'll have both, Mike's contact information as well as the new owners on there, so if there's a problem, I just made sure they both were aware that you're gonna hear both a landowner and the leaseholder are gonna hear about the problem.
And I mean, from a business standpoint, it makes perfect sense. I don't really see any issue with doing this from a conditional use permit standpoint. It's just important for them to understand exactly what that conditional use permit means. Yes, what the privileges and the liabilities both. If something gets violated, what can occur there?
Yep, and that's why I asked both of them to be present at the exhibit today in case you guys had, questions or concerns. Mike kind of knows we've been through it a lot. New owners, yeah. So
And we really haven't had many complaints out there
we
in
haven't
quite
had
some
any for a
time.
while. It's been quite a while.
Randy?
Well, is this also a review of the existing CUP during this process that we're reassigning?
Not normally unless we've had a complaint, which we haven't. So
Well, I think the concern that we're hearing is the UTV traffic on some of these county roads, and
the trail goes right through the campground. There's actually off the road trail.
And so I'm just curious, do the applicants give out any information with their rentals on the trail system and standards of safety and courtesy with the rental?
I would say Mystic is probably the best at doing that. They created a document that a lot of other places have kind of utilized, showing the map where they're supposed to be, what they're not supposed to do, what they are supposed to do. So yeah.
And we are continuing to run, we'll still move around.
You're going to run that?
Right, for at least 2 years.
Okay. And that's in the agreement that way? The transfer that they're going to run the.
I guess I want to clarify, we're not transferring anything. Mike is still going to hold the CUP. We're just adding the lease holders to it.
Two holders, right?
Because I wasn't comfortable transferring the whole thing because in theory, Mike's still the responsible party because he's still the owner.
And I want to be clear, I'm not pointing at you guys at the problem. It's the forest-wide problem that we're talking about.
So what we need is a motion to add the other folks to the existing conditional use permit.
We proposed a condition in there.
I guess, we wrote something. What do we write?
To approve the assignment of CUP 29813 from Triple Hills LLC to Woodby Ham Properties LLC, conditioned upon Woodby Ham Properties LLC's assumption of all of the terms and conditions of the current CUP, with each party equally responsible for compliance with the terms and conditions of the CUP. In the event of a violation of the terms and condition of the CUP, notice will be sent to both parties. Any permanent transfer of the CUP between the parties shall be approved pursuant to the application, applicable county rules, regulations, and effect at the time of the transfer.
Bruce wrote that one.
Randy. Quick question for our legal counsel. Process, we don't have to have a public hearing to make this amendment?
I don't think so. No, because you're just adding another party and.
So if you look at your previous condition, it basically says in there a condition of the CUP that they have to come before you to make any changes to ownership. That's where I felt this was kind of a gray area because it's not really ownership, but it kind of is.
Follow-up question. So when do we usually review this, or don't we annually?
This one's on an as needed.
As needed, okay.
Yeah,
So,
for quite a while.
so I would make the motion to approve the amendment as presented.
Second, further discussion, Bruce, you have something to add?
I'm just going to make the record clear. Part of the consideration of the process here today was they're not changing the boundary, they're not changing the conditions in any way. They're just adding another responsible party consistent with the motion before you. Correct.
And I see the edit in our zoning ordinance clears that up significantly. So,
Okay, further discussion.
Well, I think, I realize what we're discussing here, but on item 7 there, the state requires smoke alarms to be in every cabin, and it's the main lodge.
That condition is from 2005, so it hasn't been changed and or added. If they have to meet state law, they have to meet state law. That's the first condition.
Okay.
First condition says they have to meet all state law.
That's
So,
fine. It just
yeah.
doesn't state that there.
It wouldn't, but the first condition does. So our conditions are older. At the time, it must not have been a regulation, but now if it is, they have to require that as part of their state license.
We do have alarm for all of that.
Yeah.
Further discussion. Randy?
well, I think, that's a good point, Richard, that maybe at some point when we just update them across the board, no significant changes, but just make them more consistent with what, I mean, this is almost 20 years old. So, yeah.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Bruce, I think we're down
Thanks,
to
guys.
executive session.
Did they ever have anything remaining?
We wanted to talk about.
Subdivision ordinance.
Yeah.
Gotten there yet?
Oh, well, let's work on.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, I don't have a document yet. There's a live draft in there. There has been. We have met with Randy and Adam Thompson from Interstate Engineering and Zach Grappentine.
Yeah,
So you say
he's an
Grappentine?
engineer.
He's an engineer that deals more with like, we'll say water type stuff and road type stuff versus some of the surveyors and engineers are just doing the surveying side of things. We've gone through pretty much the entire subdivision ordinance and kind of marked it as to where we see issues, kind of. Now we're working on the detail of those issues. So similar to what you're seeing with the zoning ordinance, you're going to see the subdivision ordinance as well. For the most part, I think we kind of have it down to the main sections that need some assistance, we'll say, because it's old and we're at that point, is going to be the water requirements of like when we have to provide certain types of water, how it works. Septic, maybe a little bit of changes, but not a whole lot because really the laws haven't changed. You can do it for state law as long as it meets the regulations. And then the road layout, I guess I'm trying to clarify and maybe make, like we did with the zoning ordinance, get it down to where it's easier. We've had a lot of struggles with, the different subdivision people trying to follow it and they can't come up with it and I can't give them a clear, concise, like this is what you need to do and this is the route you take. That's kind of where we're at, I think, with it. Trying to simplify it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead.
On the road part, the septic is pretty easy because we use the DANR to get that approval. So we've got a lot of guidelines there that we just unilaterally adopt. On the roads, we can use the AASHTO, which is the national standard for different roads, and so we can adopt a lot of it. So that's it. It's going to be easier. The process is what we're working on. But the real question, folks, is on the water. And the work group needs a little guidance. Currently, and I'll just use a scenario, if somebody comes in Park Forest and they want to develop 20 lots, we let them punch 20 wells. If we don't let them punch 20 wells, or even 5 wells of 4 each, then they can put in a public water system. When they put the public water system in, we make them put 1,000 or 1,200 gallons a minute, 2 parts of the ordinance that conflict, in that water system. And that's fire protection type water. So what they do is they punch the one well, have 4 guys use it rather than have a water system. And now we have numerous wells permitted rather than maybe one good well that could produce water, potable water for all 20 homes. And if you look at all the rural water systems in western South Dakota, they're not designed for fire protection. They're designed for potable water. And so when what is the trigger that we're going to require a water system? Do we want to change that? Because I believe that with our wildfire or our fire mitigation plan, that we're taking care of some of the threat of wildfire. So what's at risk are the structures. So in that type of density, do we want to encourage them to put in potable water with maybe one well, or do we want to encourage them, as we are today, to put in multiple wells? So
You just use the term density. 20 lots at 2 acres and 20 lots at 12 acres are completely different density.
the 20 acres in Park Forest would be a 5-acre average. 20 lots would be a 5-acre average, right?
Sure.
So,
and are you actually going to run a water system?
Potable water
that
system.
Large a piece. 20.
Well, we want.
So you're talking about 40 acres, right? No.
40 acres would have 8 lots.
Okay, so you're saying 20. So you got 160 acres or 120
acres.
And you're going to run a water system inside that. That's the question. Is I don't think you can financially. I don't think you can do that.
Well,
I don't think you'd be able to develop it.
You can. I think it's more economical if you're putting potable water in, which is 2-inch lines rather than 6-inch lines with hydrants.
Well,
so
then you're not doing fire suppression anyway.
Right. That's my point. So do we want it? So getting back to the subject is, do we want to encourage them to put in potable water, or do we want to encourage them like we are today to drop multiple wells? And in your scenario, let's say one of those was a larger lot. Then maybe allow that one to have a well, but the other 19 lots would have potable water. And so when do we flick that switch? Is it density of suburban residential, which is tied to the zoning ordinance, or is it when you cluster? I mean, what are our guidelines? Because I didn't really realize that we were leading them to that conclusion of, yeah, let's just drop a bunch of wells out there. And I don't think that's good conservation. Anyway, did I sum that up?
Yeah,
with the
that's
concern of
kind
the
so we've had lots of discussion, but we always keep coming back to, well, right now, when I look at the ordinance, it's, okay, you have your zoning, here's your density requirements. Basically, you can present whatever you want, and we don't give them a clear, like, if you're gonna go to suburban residential, we'd rather see a
See,
joint water system.
that makes sense to
If
me.
you're gonna go to clustering, let's say you have 120 acres, but you wanna put all your houses down
On
here
2-acre
on
lots.
2-acre lots all together, and you wanna leave the rest more open, then maybe we're gonna push for you to do a joint water system or a shared system versus
that has testing.
individual wells that can meet the requirements. Now,
Well, Amber, if I may, the example is over by north of St. Ange, the one that came in, and it's Park Forest, and they've got how many lots back there, and they're going to pop in all these wells, and we didn't have a reason to deny it because our ordinance encourages them to do that. So in the front part, at least, they could have maybe serviced with one.
I think
that's
you'd
kind
have,
of that differentiation, trying
Sure.
to figure out when you kick that.
I think you'd have issues with water quality with water lines that long, unless people live in them. And there's several people living every single day. You got hundreds of feet of water line before it gets to your house. It just sits there and stagnates.
Right, but the rural water groups overcome that. Butte Mead, all these guys overcome it, and so maybe you don't build it all at once. You see what I mean? But you have the system in place, and so they're dealing with it every day, and they're successful. And to me, I'm leaning towards potable water being the priority on less density, and fire protection comes in when you get more density. Now, that's just where I'm leading with it, because I want to encourage them to test their water and have less wells, less penetrations. That's just where I'm at with it. I don't know how to do that.
So as we continue this discussion, this is where I'm at, because, and I understand the process. I mean, I deal with the process all the time, but I would really appreciate if we need to go to have a joint meeting between county commission and planning and zoning, because it's very cumbersome to have P&Z work so hard on all this stuff for the last 8 months, which is what you saw with the zoning board. That's how long we've been working on it. I would like to have more input so it doesn't get this far and then we're having to go backwards. And we have done that before, you know, where we've done some of those joint, or we've asked, like Bob's obviously always at planning and zoning, but he's only one side. Do the commissioners come one at a time to those P&Z so they have a better idea? Because it is very frustrating to go through this whole process. I've been getting emails since we left this room from our planning and zoning board members that are frustrated because they felt they put a very good project together and now they're getting questioned, and you asked them to do this. So I came to you guys 8 months ago and said, who do you want to be on that workforce? And you said you wanted planning commission. Nobody else wanted to do it. They asked Bob to be there, obviously, and he was. So now we're going backwards, and that's frustrating to me from staff, and it's frustrating for our planning and zoning board members. They put a lot of time and effort into it. So I don't, if that's how this is going to go, which I perceive with zoning ordinance, I don't want that to happen over the next 8 months with the subdivision ordinance.
Well,
So we need to figure out a different process.
that's one of the reasons we're bringing this stuff up here today too.
Yep.
Is the other thing on the septic, I will add, is one of the primary concerns is we have these vacation homes that are meeting the design criteria based on bedrooms, but their occupancy is huge. So we're thinking of trying to work some language in there that if you're a certain size house, so many bathrooms and bedrooms, that the county will require a bigger drain field than the statute. And so those are, I think, are the two things that philosophically came up in the work group that we couldn't answer. I mean, we can look at the technical stuff all day long, but we need direction before we take it to planning and zoning to make those decisions so that their job is a little easier as we move forward. This isn't as hard as the zoning ordinance.
Brandon, I'm not going to disagree with what Commissioner Dybert says. I'm going to say this though, when the knothead that builds that house and then does it as a rental and the septic fails, they have to pay to replace the septic, and they better figure it out or they're going to be replacing it again. I mean, at some point, unfortunately, we have people that build one and then sell it, and the next guy decides he's going to use it as a rental and does that. The drain field's surfacing, and then they got to come in and replace that. And it's expensive to put them in, but it's worse to tear one out and replace it.
Well, what I'm running into, Brandon, a lot is I'm not getting help from the state. So I can send pictures to them of it surfacing. I can send all of this.
If they're not enforcing,
they don't have the people. They don't have the staff to get out here. There's one person. There's nobody West River anymore. They're all in Pier, and they just can't get out here. They just don't have the staff. So
half
then
of them have houses out here.
Gilded Mountain.
Probably renting them when they're not here.
Yeah, Gilded Mountain is a great example. It's been 3 years I've been dealing with that septic system surfacing.
Okay, what do you want to see out of this today?
I guess I just want to know, one, either some of those questions or figure out a different process that we're all involved at the same time, because I don't want to do this 5 different times.
What the work group needs is do you want us to give some direction to encourage potable water systems rather than wells?
Who was on the work group, Randy?
It's me and another surveyor and an engineer and Amber staff right now.
All right.
Yeah, and then we're going to put that over to planning and zoning. We're just doing the framework. So we don't have any capacity other than just doing the technical review.
So the state says 15 homes or 25 people, is that correct for a system that they actually review?
If you go public route, yes.
Okay.
That's when it requires a public system.
So I'm trying to decipher what you're calling a potable water system versus well. They both get potable water.
Well, I think you're missing the point.
I get your point. I just don't understand the terminology you're using because we don't use those terms.
Yes, because our ordinance, when it goes public, we require fire protection.
And or
a fire protection.
Defensible space.
No.
Not at all.
On our water system, we require 1,200 gallons a minute to 1,000 gallons a minute. You don't need that type. You don't need hydrants with that to serve potable water. That's fire protection.
Right.
So do we want to have a mid classification in there that allows for potable water without fire protection? That's for structures, is what's that set up.
You're just trying to reduce wells. You're trying to encourage wells.
Encourage tested systems, but they don't have to have that type of capacity.
And who's going to police the tested systems?
They do it themselves once they're public. They do it on their own.
At 15 homes or 20
right.
people. Right. Yes. But
we're trying to encourage that for potable water, not just.
I still don't get how you take 120 acres and run a full 2-inch line through that whole thing to surface water with pressure and everything else. and make that worth anybody's time.
Agreed, but it's a lot easier to do that than it is to have 1,200 gallons a minute at that remote lot. So we want to encourage less wells and more community water.
So, but I'm gonna bring up the other side of this. You guys can choose to go whatever route you go, but if you change the water requirements, then you are going to have to redo your fire requirements as well. They have to go hand in hand because you're requiring fire suppression on basically, anything you're over a certain amount. You have to have that. So the problem we're having right now with the Paradise Acres 4, which you're gonna see that coming back forward, they are not able to meet the standards of the fire suppression portion of their system, even though they're getting water from the city. We can't do it because of pressurization, whatever.
Amber,
So
what's that zoning? What's that zoning?
Park Forest.
Okay, so in this case, they would have the option of getting potable water, and their fire plan would stay in place.
Their fire plan is saying that they have
They're
to
using
have
hydrants.
That's their plan.
Okay, well then they have to do that.
So, but that's what I think we're running into more and more now is we've required this, but some of these places that are being developed cannot meet those standards, and they will not be able to meet those standards on a well.
But a fire plan does not require fire protection water. It doesn't. Fire mitigation.
You just got done telling me it did.
No,
Quite
our
literally,
water,
when I said
no, our
fire
water,
mitigation, said no.
when we do public systems, we require it. It's in the water part, not in the fire part. That's why it's just.
Yeah, so you're talking about 5 different areas and
right.
Crossing over everything.
Yeah.
I'm lost.
So what it comes down to, you can see the complexities of the discussions we're having at this. I'm not getting anywhere because
on the water,
there's a difference to what we need to do. I don't know if you want fire suppression to be the number one or if you want less wells. That's what I need. Because that will dictate.
That's coming out of him, not out of the board.
But that's why I'm asking
right.
you guys as a board, what do you want? Because I don't want to go through this whole process and you come down and say, well, no, we want fire suppression to be our number one. We don't necessarily care if we have numerous wells. Because that's what we're dealing with now.
And it's not just me, it's the work group.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of where we're at. Is we don't know where to look at edits because that will make a difference.
And this one north of St. Ange or north of Whitewood really brought it to our attention.
And that was the Kissick one.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you want to do?
Maybe the answer is we look at putting something in there about potable water, a draft, and we get that to plan and zoning as an alternative.
Or maybe we could reduce the development and have certain areas that they don't develop in that. We need to cut water supply down more ways than just have fire protection or drinking water. That's the hills are providing water for out in the plains and that with the aquifers and that. And you're not doing anything about that. All you're thinking about is build more houses, giving everybody water for drinking or fire protection. Got to look at it in the broader scheme of things nowadays. Didn't have to before, but I think so. And because I look at it a little differently. I don't do the engineering of that like you do, so you look at it in that respect. We got to look at it both ways. Have things all around. I think I didn't get to too many of those meetings, but I thought we should all be to those planning and zoning meetings if it didn't have to be. Well, they're let the public come and do it too, listen too, but that's the problem there.
It's not. They're all public meetings, Richard. Anybody can attend. It's every single meeting they can attend. There's an agenda for them. That's up to the public to get here. It's not my job to make sure that they're here.
Well, if that's the case, we should be going to.
Yeah, but Richard, you're talking about changing the zoning ordinance.
Probably. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Well, that's the difference in what we're doing. We're taking the zoning ordinance and trying to work on the technical side.
Everywhere.
The technical side.
I think it's important to understand too, though, and Richard and I have had this discussion, so it's nothing new. I mean, we've had this discussion a lot, is the subdivision ordinance is there not to stop subdivision. You can't. I'm sorry. I know you guys want to, but there is no way to say you can't do that. Now, you can have provisions to make it, you look at how it's being developed, you add things. You can do that.
Yeah,
But you
that's
can't
right.
put a district in that says you can't develop this area.
Well, you gotta do what's right, but,
Well, if we
there's
put it
more
around
ways.
Iron Creek Lake, I'm sure there'd be somebody throwing a piece of it because I couldn't do anything else up there. It's the same with, if I've got a 40-acre chunk in the hills, and my retirement plan is developed that to where it was when I bought the property, I'm gonna have a big issue when you say I can't develop that. That's takings. That's when you go to court and the county pays me for what they
You can
restricted my
limit
use
the
of.
development or kind of
But we are
development
limiting
you
it though, because you guys, in 1974, this county put in regulation based on the zoning districts at the time. Those have not changed. They are still there. So you have to use that to what you have. And then from there, you make the subdivision regulations, which is where we're at now, but you can't just stop development. So at this point, if you want to hold a joint meeting on this, that's where we need to be. But I'm not gonna sit here and have an argument every time over, well, we want this and we want that and we want that, then
But we want
let's
planning and zoning to
have-
handle it for it. Read our mind.
yeah, that's what I'm here asking you to do. But usually I get the, well, go back to planning and zoning. I can't.
Well,
You
then
guys have to make that decision.
let's try to schedule a joint one and go from there.
So this would be my request then, is we already have the zoning stuff that obviously, we have to deal with. I did send an email to all of you guys just asking to please set up something with me so we can have that discussion outside of this so I can get a feel for what your concerns are. That's what I would ask is let's go ahead and have a zoning / subdivision ordinance thing where we talk about it and we have a joint, whether I don't know if you want to do all of the planning and zoning board. I can tell you from the planning and zoning board, they feel like they have a good document. I don't think they necessarily feel like, it passed on to this board. So I think that's kind of one thing. The subdivision is going to be bigger.
Well, the subdivision, the work group, we can concentrate on the septics and the roads.
Yeah.
And we
The
can look
water
at
is the bigger
the
system.
water, we can take the standards there and update them. But we still have the philosophical question, is this board's input? And basically it's a lot of cleanup. I hate to hear that word, but it really is.
Okay.
Okay. So how do you want to go about that, Bruce? How do you want to try to schedule something? I have no idea.
For your consideration, of course, in April, there's at each meeting, probably more so on April 11th and the 25th, are boards of equalization. And Brent is joining us now, and I can't quantify exactly, but I'm going to guess that the 25th will probably be a fairly long day. It's going to be long, I think, on the agenda with just all the planning and zoning stuff. So my point is that you've got 2 commission meetings scheduled that could go, past normal time, especially the first one. Now you're going to add an additional meeting. So
And the week in between is Bob and I'll be in Pier. And then we work the planning and zoning.
So here's what I would suggest. I would suggest that those of us that have concerns with the zoning ordinance get together with Amber. Let's identify what we're up against there before we set it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's just a little language stuff and we can clean it up easy, then we'll be okay. Yeah. So by our next meeting, we're going to know where we're at in the process. And then on the subdivision one, we can wait till after the boards of adjustments and get as far in our work group as we can till we need those philosophical decision.
Right.
We may come up with
possible
another
joint meeting in May then.
So what I'm going to suggest then, because it is
April's
the
pretty busy.
afternoon of May 9th for you guys to plan to be here. And I will work with the planning and zoning board if we need to do that.
What day is May 9th?
That's your county commission meeting. That's your regularly scheduled county commission meeting. And then that way I could try to get them to say, hey, can you be here? Randy just said he may not be here.
More to come.
Okay. let's get past this. Brett, you want to give us a brief?
Yeah, I can give you a brief rundown of what will be coming up in April.
Yeah.
Boards of Equalization, April 11th. But we don't have a ton of appeals, so that's good.
Oh, we don't?
We've had a lot of calls.
Huh.
We do have some stipulations, you know, there's been, for example, there's one I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get to, honestly, because of the snow, but we'll see. Depends on what's gonna happen weather-wise. We have some commercial ones that still working on. Low rent, low income ones that want to be done by their income instead of by cost.
I'm shocked that you don't have a lot of appeals. I thought you would.
Well, let's knock on wood right now, because we still have.
Okay.
Well, it hasn't come and gone.
Yeah, the deadline is
county,
not
right?
come and gone yet.
When is the deadline for county?
The 4th.
Did the cities have their yet?
Yes.
Yet? And they didn't have that many.
Theirs was the 16th.
They already had their board.
The city had quite a few, but Spearfish, but not astronomical.
No, Lead had 2, Deadwood had 1, Central City had 1,
Spearfish.
Whitewood had a couple. Spearfish had 20. Anyway, it wasn't that many, honestly.
All right.
One of the questions that will come up, I think, is sort of a newer issue. Is going to be the veterans are entitled, if they miss a deadline for either owner occupied or to file their veterans preference statement. I'm lacking the term.
We'll apply for the exemption.
Exemption. That they get the opportunity then to come to you through an abatement process. I think we determined to ask you to go back. Historically, you limited abatement this back to a year, but to ask you to cover all or part of the preceding year that they could have otherwise qualified, right? So we've got one that's going to come to you as an appeal, and that will rise and fall on its own merits, but probably that one and others are legally brought pursuant to 1018 as an abatement. And they would have, you know, the luxury of time throughout the year to come in and do that. Is that fair, Brett and Brenda?
You know, and it's a little tricky. It's kind of, you kind of have to figure out, well, then what is the, when you don't go on statutory dates, right? Then you're going into, so when is the date when we'll stop? I mean, if you could say, well, you bring it in July, well, that's good for the next November 1st, but is that good, you know, but for that last November 1st? So when do you stop it? I mean, you go take it up to October 31st, say, well, we'll abate you for that year. It gets kind of sticky because we need to get away from
Then we
the
have
date of application.
we have 2 new laws coming in July that affect this too. One is on another veteran designation, and the other one is on a industrial park reduction of assessment. Those both passed.
We'll have to be mindful of those going forward. They won't, yeah, right? More fun to be done. So, but that'll be one issue that you haven't probably dealt with a lot that will come to the forefront. If you have any questions, Brenda and Brett, I listened in on, they had quite a discussion about this yesterday and trying to sort that out.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
That's nice.
All right.
It's not
Mr. Chairman, you know, Jackie's still online, so I don't know if you want to talk about items from commissioners, items from the public, and then do executive session last.
Okay, we'll do that. Obviously, there's no one in the public, so we don't forego that one.
Unless Jackie had something at the public.
Jackie, did you have any questions or comments?
Still awake?
No, I don't, but thank you. Thanks for the time.
All right, you're welcome. Commissioners. Randy?
Yeah, thank you, Franklin City.
I was
citizens.
I was wondering how the council of local governments was going. Did you go to the?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
They only had one.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it went fine. New members there and that. So I see the city of Lead is going to hire them to do a comprehensive plan.
They're actually in the middle of it already. They public meetings started. They're going.
Anyone else? All right, let's address our, let's go offline and address our last order of business, which is executive session.
Motion to go in executive session pursuant to.
125.
There you go.
You want
Second.
Okay, motion and second to go into executive session. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
This
Okay.
conference will now be recorded.
We've come out of executive session with no action. And we're back in regular session.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to pay the bill at hand to Movera in the amount of $1,991.18 for the Medicaid fee schedule, and to request we get a satisfaction judgment.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. All right. Anything else to come before the board this morning? Seeing none, I wish we adjourn. We are adjourned.
Thank you. Just as a reminder, I won't be here that last weekend, our last meeting of